flows out of the corn to attract one of the pests, natural enemies of the caterpillar. So you can see here. So here's the Spodoptera caterpillar. It's not actually eating corn in this picture, but it creates this odorous cry for help. That's actually not really a cry for help. It's more like, it's wonderful and delicious over here. Come on over. And this parasitic wasp comes on over and lays eggs in the actual caterpillar. So you can see an example of a parasitic wasp eggs over on the side. So the plant just releases this peptide and all this action happens. And it's able to kind of fight off these predators that it has in the most ingenious way. So I loved that way that a plant can create resistance and is capable of doing these things. So neat. So we get to have our beautiful, a beautiful corn, which is so useful for so many things. We also, this is another really fun one, plants can be subversive, enticing, and full of mischief. So you've probably seen these before, you know, plants, orchids especially love to mimic things in order to get pollinated. So, you know, the sex game in plants is really complicated, like it is in humans, because they can't like run around and go find each other. So they have to use different tools. And one of the ways is to convince insects to do their bidding. And so with this is the hammer orchid, and the hammer orchid is really interesting. It's an Australian orchid, and it mimics the mating it leverages the mating habits of the male thinid wasp. So the female thinid wasps are actually totally flightless. They just climb up to the top of plants and kind of wait for somebody to come along, for one of the males to come along and pick them up. So the orchid decides to mimic that by making this fake little wasp and holding it out there. And along comes the male wasp and sees this female and is able to pollinate the orchid at the same time. So you can just kind of see how this, you know, this plant is using this kind of mischievous strategy. Which I think is also really inspiring to me, that not that I'm advocating, you know, subversive, enticing, weird things, but I think that this, you know, shows just a really creative way to get around a complication that a plant is facing. I wanted to share a study by Jeanette Haviland-Jones and their team in a paper called An Environmental Approach to Positive Emotions in Flowers. And in this study, it was a very, very simple study, but they looked at what happens when you give people flowers. And they found that when you do, people have genuine smiles. And they found that individuals of any gender elicit positive emotions more than almost anything else that they tried to make people happy. It was giving them flowers. And also that flowers presented to elderly people increase their positive emotions for up to 3 days, as well as their ability to increase memory. So we all know this, but I think this is a really good reminder to give someone flowers if you can. And you don't have to go to the shop and buy them. I mean, there's often flowers around. Weeds are beautiful. There's a lot of beautiful things that you can pick and give to people. And I think all of us would be delighted with a, kind of rugged little bunch of weedy flowers if someone gave that to us. So flowers can actually, make us happier. And we know that. And this is making me remember, how much I want to share flowers with everyone, with all of you. And I also wanted to share, the last one is I wanted to share a story. Some of you have probably seen this story about the standoff lily bloom in Namibia. And just, flowers and their ability to return to life in such abundance and just to spring forth. And so in this very dry, arid part of Namibia, everything you see in this picture would have been just a dry field. And after they get, every 3, 4, 5 years, they get this intense flooding. They get 30 centimeters of rain very quickly. And then the orchids within 5 days grow from being absolutely nothing to being these full orchids, and they flower. And they flower just for 6 or 7 days, and then they're gone. So this year, I think that these pictures were taken around March 23rd. The standoff lilies flowered. And, it's just this incredible thing to think about, the idea of being buried under all this dry sand for so long. And then once things happen, just, bursting out into life and bringing all of that joy and celebration and everything. And it reminds me a lot of, what I hope happens at some point this year, where, we're all kind of still under that dry sand, and I'm looking forward to that being our next, herb conference or community gathering or something, when we're all safe and ready. So, I look to flowers for inspiration. I hope that that you look to flowers for inspiration, to see what we can learn from them. And it doesn't necessarily, you could just sit with them and taste them and touch them and be with them. So it's a few flower words before we get into some more inspiration, which is going to be music. And our music today comes from Lemolo. And Lemolo is just fabulous. I was lucky enough to get a sneak peek yesterday and a tiny bit today. And they are a singer and songwriter based in Seattle. So they're coming to you from Seattle. Lemolo's released 3 full-length Lemolo records and has so many accolades. I was really impressed learning about them. They're also the featured vocalist on the new Pearl Jam album, which is so exciting, that's coming out. So I'm going to hand it over to Lemolo, and I hope you can dance freely and connect with all of us through the music today.
Hi everyone, my name's Megan and this is Nate, and we are Lemolo, and we are joining you today from a recording studio in Seattle, Washington. So a special thank you to the folks at Mountain Rose Herbs for having us today. We had the pleasure of meeting them playing a few house shows in Eugene, Oregon over the years, and just kind of connecting with them and with their community. So really honored to be a part of this event today. So thanks so much. We have a few songs for you and hope you enjoy.
Hey
Thank you. All right, this next song is called Letters. Thank you. Okay. I wish that we could see you all, but thanks again so much for joining us. We have a few more songs. reflecting upon how the whole last year I've spent most of my time kind of holed up working on new music and new songs and songwriting and that kind of thing. So it feels really fun to actually be sharing music with people. This is kind of our first time performing in maybe over a year. So thanks again for joining us. If you're just joining us, we're Lemolo, based in Seattle, and we just have 2 more songs for you. And then you are on your way to having more amazing information and speakers today. So thanks again. All right, thanks again, you guys. This is our last song. Thank you again to Mountain Rose Herbs, and have a good one. Here we go. This is called South of Sound. Okay, thank you guys so much for joining us. I had a lot of fun. Did you have fun?
I had fun.
Yeah, thanks for allowing us to perform again. Thanks, you guys.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Lemolo. That was amazing. I know everyone in my household was just, yeah, all about it. That was really beautiful, and it was so incredible to have you here live. So thank you.
It's our pleasure. Thanks again for having us.
So now we have the absolutely wonderful Rosalee de la Forêt, who's going to be talking to us about the energetics of spring flowers. So most of you are probably familiar with Rosalee, but I think Rosalee is she's a connector of people and plants. So that's what she does so well. And she does it in such a beautiful, heartfelt way. So we talked about plants as inspiration a little earlier. She's going to really bring those plants to you as a gift of spring flowers right into your house, or wherever you're watching this. And so, if you're not familiar with Rosalee's work, you want to be. Rosalee is the author of The Alchemy of Herbs and Wild Remedies, both fantastic books that help you to kind of create these wondrous things that made of plants and herbs, and to connect much more deeply with herbalism. So I'm beyond excited to see what Rosalee is going to offer us today. And welcome, Rosalee, and take it away.
Thanks, Bevin. Thanks for that introduction. I'm totally blissed out right now. That was so awesome from Lemolo. getting to hear live music. Ever since Mountain Rose Herbs announced them, I've been listening to them constantly. And so it was just such a treat to fall in love with their music and get a live performance. So thank you. Well, for my presentation today, I have a very visually oriented presentation. And so I do recommend, if you're just listening, then you might want to check in and watch this presentation as well. So here we are. Happy spring. And I'm actually going to close down my camera there just so I don't get distracted by myself. So yes, happy spring. Welcome. Spring is one of the happiest times of year as we emerge from this quiet, introspective season of winter to the bright and sunny days of new growth and potential. And I can't say there's been a spring that I didn't absolutely cherish. This is definitely my season. But with 2020 behind us and some uncertainty still ahead, this spring seems especially precious. In this presentation, I'm sharing my love of spring flowers and some of the wisdom I've gleaned from these beauties over the years. If you've spent any time with flowers, then you've probably been gifted your own insights from them. And my hope is that what I'm sharing complements and inspires your own flower wisdom. In fact, throughout the presentation, I'll be offering invitations for you to recognize your unique insights and realizations. Oops, I see here. There we go. My first invitation is to join me in being joyfully present this season. This time last year, many of us were forced to change direction for better or for worse. Our landscapes shifted, and we often took on new priorities. With the surprise and initial turbulence of the pandemic behind us, it can be easy to fall into a rut, a rhythm that just doesn't fulfill us. It's worth taking that pause now to ask, what do I really want now in this new reality? Spring offers the gift of renewal. If life starts right now, now what? What do I actually want in life? What are my highest priorities? And perhaps even more revealing, does my life reflect those priorities? While the answers to these questions are unique to us all, something I find heartening was that for many, 2020 was a year of falling in love with nature. According to research done at Vermont parks, many outdoor activities saw a huge increase last year. Watching wildlife, gardening, being outside to do photos or art, just relaxing alone and walking were up tremendously. In other words, we really showed up outside last year. One of the biggest gifts of herbalism for me personally has been the never-ending and deepening spiral of falling in love with plants and the natural world again and again and again. And spring flowers generously offer us that gift of intensely falling in love. Many spring flowers bloom brightly and radiantly, a welcome sight for our eyes and our hearts after a dormant winter. But, and this is a very important but, they don't bloom forever. We call this ephemeral. Ephemeral beings demand presence. They don't wait for us to find a convenient time or wait for our schedules to align. No flower says, "Oh, you're busy this week? Great. I'll just wait to bloom next week." Flowers are on no one's schedule but their own. My own spring season is showing that once again. While of course certain flowers bloom around the same time, this year everything is later than normal. There's futility in demanding to see my first dandelion bloom the same day as last year, because nature shifts, changes, moves on according to the deep rhythms of the earth and not the calendar that we hang on the wall. If we're narrowly focused on a to-do list of chores, errands, and other shoulds, we could easily miss the beauty that is being offered around us. My intention here is not to create a new form of FOMO or fear of missing out. We don't need more anxiety about missed opportunities. So instead, I'm offering a gentle reminder. And so that's why my personal commitment and invitation to you is to be fully present and revel in the ephemeral beauty and wisdom of spring flowers. And that simply starts with slowing down, paying attention, and of course, getting outside. All right, so let's turn now to the flowers themselves. I've chosen each of these flowers because I love them dearly, and I'm excited to be with all of you so we can joyfully revel in them together. Let's begin with violets, the harbingers of spring. Their smiling, colorful blooms gladden our hearts and brighten our faces as they pop up in lawns, line stream banks, and fill feral meadows. These small and delicate plants offer us so much: food, remedies, and a balm to our hearts. Many species of violets grow in temperate climates. Sweet violets, or Viola odorata, are dearly loved for their compelling scent. They're native to Europe and Asia, and they've spread to North America and even parts of Australia. To best understand violets' virtues, find a patch of violets and then get down on their level. You can kneel, but lying down and curling up close is best. You'll notice the air is cooler here and also how the dampness of the earth seeps into you. Hello, violet. As you touch those soft, delicate flowers and cup those heart-shaped leaves, you'll probably notice something else: happiness, relaxation, contentment. By spending intimate time with violet, you've absorbed everything you need to know and understand about how violet's gifts work. Violet is cooling and moistening. It brings calming and soothing relief, especially to dry and dense tissues. In addition to being cooling and moistening, violets are also nutritive. They are classified as having both a sweet and salty taste. Before we look at violet more deeply, I want to introduce the concept of the 5 tastes of herbal medicine. Using our senses to understand how herbs work is as old as herbal medicine itself. Many systems of herbal medicine around the world use taste to understand herbal actions. It's kind of like a classification system that's really based in the senses. I base my own studies of herbs in the 5 tastes. One, because there's a lot of wisdom and insight in the traditional teachings, but also because it involves us using our own senses to get to know herbs. Through that, we create our own experiences so that instead of simply passively memorizing something, we're actively engaged. Plus, it's a lot more fun. So we'll be looking at each of these tastes today in respect to every flower that I'll be showcasing. The sweet taste is about nourishment. We often turn to these herbs when we want to build or nourish when someone is weak. When an herb is classified as sweet, it doesn't necessarily mean it tastes like honey or sugar. These herbs are often high in sweet constituents such as carbohydrates and polysaccharides, which then gives them kind of a sweetish taste. An example of this is marshmallow root or astragalus root. Both of those have a sweetish taste. Sweet herbs can be demulcent, soothing tissues with their gluey, slimy nature. They can also modulate the immune system and are often used to improve immunity. Many of our building and adaptogen herbs are considered to be sweet, harking back to that deep nourishment that is the sweet taste. Violets are classified as sweet due to their demulcent qualities. They can help soften and soothe irritated mucous membranes. I also love violets for someone who often feels like they have dry skin, dry hair, dry eyes, or maybe they say, "My mouth is always dry." In addition to being sweet, violet is also classified as salty. Not all herbs that are classified as salty taste like table salt. Certainly seaweed does, but more often these herbs have a rich mineral taste like kale. That's because these herbs are high in minerals like magnesium, calcium, and phosphorus. These nutrients are the building blocks of our own tissues, and so turning to these herbs regularly can have astounding results for our hair, our skin, and our bones. Herbs with a salty taste also have interesting effects on the fluids of our body. Violet supports the lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is like this great waterway running through your body. And just as rivers and streams can run smoothly or become stagnant and swollen, so it is with your lymphatic vessels. Violet loves to grow near clear running water, and they can be used to keep your internal rivers running smoothly as well. Herbalist Jim McDonald recommends violet for people who react to stress by screaming until they are red in the face, or for those who are overly rigid. Violet softens, he explains, and inspires flexibility. Hildegard von Bingen, the German Benedictine abbess born in 1098, used violets extensively and recommended them in wine for anyone oppressed by melancholy with a discontented mind. All right, let's look at how to identify violets. As I said, you'll often find them growing in cool, moist places. Many species have heart-shaped leaves, and the plant grows close to the ground. These slight irregular flowers grow on upright, leafless stalks. They droop slightly. They have 5 petals, and they can be purple, blue, white, or yellow. Except for Viola odorata, most violet flowers don't have a strong fragrance. And that beautiful botanical drawing you see there comes from the book I co-wrote with Emily Hahn, Wild Remedies, How to Forage Healing Herbs and Craft Your Own Herbal Medicine. Well, it's easy to love the humble and shy violet flowers, but for some species, those lovely blooms are actually just for show. For various violets, that showy flower is sterile. It doesn't help the plant to reproduce. Instead, these plants have small hidden flowers nesting beneath the leaves. These are called cleistogamous flowers. These flowers self-pollinate. Compared to the beautiful flowers that we're familiar with, the cleistogamous flowers are not very remarkable, but it's really a brilliant strategy that works so well for them. In this way, violets hold what is precious to them very close. They nurture and guard it. And through this tending, they create this powerful energy that bursts the ripe seed capsules open to exuberantly spread the seeds far and wide. Sometimes, if you're lucky enough, you can actually hear that happening, and those seeds will actually burst out of the seed capsule. And this violet shows us that we don't have to exist in one way. We can be multidimensional in how we approach life. And they show us there's wisdom in nurturing something within us until it's ready to be let go. Since we're talking about identifying violets, I want to mention there are some lookalikes out there, especially before flowering. These include both edible plants as well as some poisonous plants that you want to have a lot of caution around, including monkshood, which is aconitum, lesser celandine. So be certain you can identify the plant, as always, before harvesting. Of course, humans aren't the only ones to love and rely on violets. Violet species that rely on pollinators for fertilization, the bright flowers attract many insects, including bees, moths, butterflies. Violets can also host larvae for butterflies and moths. I know many of us are familiar with the way that monarch butterflies rely on milkweed plants, and a similar relationship is seen between fritillary butterflies and violets. In other words, without violets, there aren't fritillary butterflies. There are so many fun ways to work with violet. The beautiful flowers can be infused into teas, vinegars, syrups, and jellies. Fresh or candied flowers make lovely garnishes for salads and desserts. The dried leaves make a wonderful, nutrient-dense, nourishing herbal infusion, and I really think that violet leaf tea is underrated. The leaves can also be eaten fresh in salads, steamed, or sautéed. I will say, though, that different violet species have varying degrees of saponins in their leaves. This is a soapy constituent, so it actually kind of tastes soapy. It does have medicinal benefits, but if you eat too much of it, it might make you a bit nauseous. So you want to eat a few leaves and make sure that they're palatable. I love to inspire others to spend time with herbs through simple and delicious recipes. And so what I've done for this presentation is I've just gone ahead and created a whole ebook with my favorite spring flowers recipes. And you're going to be able to download this for free at the end of the presentation. This is also just a lot more practical because I'm going to show you some fun recipes that you can make. So instead of having to jot all those down by hand during the presentation, you'll just be able to download them all. Well, violet syrup is one of my favorite springtime traditions. I'm blessed to have aromatic violets that grow abundantly in my neighbor's yard, and they're kind enough to invite me over when they're in bloom. And they just called this week actually and said, come on over for the harvest. So I'm really looking forward to that. Harvesting those soft, delicate flowers, feeling the sun on my face, listening to the birds singing around me. It's just pure springtime joy. And then that scent is just so enticing. And making the syrup is such a delight. If you've never made this before, I so highly recommend it. It's so much fun. It's like everyday magic. You make a tea out of the flowers, and most often that tea will be a deep blue. And then you add a couple drops of lemon juice and it'll transform into this purple color that you see on the screen there. So it's lots of fun. And then once you have the syrup in hand, you can make all sorts of fun drinks, including cocktails and mocktails. I have a really fun time with this myself. And then last year we made violet gelato for the first time, and it was so dreamy. So I'm really looking forward to this year's violet harvest. And again, as a reminder, all of the recipes that I'm talking about are in the Spring Flowers ebook that I've created for you. And at the end of the presentation, I'll get you that link so you can download that. Well, violets are the harbingers of spring. Their flowers spread joy. The violet invitation is to seize that joy, both because violets only bloom for a short time, but also because we can always use more joy. Violets actually remind me of a Mary Oliver poem. She writes, "If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate, give into it. Whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb." My favorite musician, Tori Amos, tells us to kiss the violets as they are waking up. What a beautiful way to greet spring in this ephemeral flower. Violet shares so many gifts with us, both as medicine and simply in the way that they grow. That one has a weird transition on it, but as you slowly see coming up here is chamomile. Our next flower is seemingly delicate, but it has surprising strength. Chamomile was probably one of my very first introductions to herbal medicine, thanks to the wisdom of Beatrix Potter and her story of Peter Rabbit. And I grew up eating off a plate just like this. I'm guessing some of you may have too. And while this holds a nostalgic place in my heart, I think it was because chamomile was so common that it was easy for me to dismiss it for many years. In my mind, it was kind of a cutesy plant, but not really a strong remedy. And I've definitely changed my mind about that. So let's get to know this plant a little bit more. Have you ever really looked at a chamomile flower? I mean, really up close. I love these flowers so much. You have those simple white ray flowers that create this halo around all these teeny tiny disc flowers. So what we commonly call one chamomile flower is actually an inflorescence of hundreds of flowers. Chamomile is in camouflage. All those tiny flower heads sitting atop thin stems, which then branch out into wispy leaves. Chamomile doesn't look like a strong, stout plant. It's no oak tree or even a rose bush. The plant actually looks weak. But if you've ever spent time with chamomile, you'll know it supports a lot of life. Skippers, bees, and other insects often come to feast from its flowers. The genus name for chamomile is Matricaria, which has its roots in the word mother. Some people say that this is because chamomile is wonderful for mothers. Others say that drinking chamomile is like getting a hug from your mother. I think it could also point to the way that chamomile is like a mother who has the ability to be gentle and sweet, but can be strong and powerful when needed. More than anything, chamomile shows us how powerful it is to be comforted. Whether you've had a harrowing day in Mr. McGregor's garden, a tough commute, or you've been living through a pandemic for the past year, chamomile can offer comfort. As I sip chamomile tea, I feel my shoulders and my overall tension relax. I'm deeply grateful for that comforting gift that chamomile offers. I can hardly believe that I used to dismiss chamomile as being too common or unremarkable. Chamomile also inspires me to give the gift of comfort to others, to be a full-hearted listener to my friends and family, to offer empathy and love. For me, chamomile inspires the question, now that I've received the gift of chamomile, now that I've received comfort, how can I pay it forward? How can I offer comfort? Chamomile is an interesting plant energetically. Some herbalists classify it as slightly cooling because of its bitter taste and diaphoretic effects, which help support a fever. Others call it slightly warming due to its pungent aromatics. In either case, I think it's fairly close to neutral, and it's tolerated by most. Mostly when I think of chamomile, I think of its aromatic and relaxing characteristics and how wonderful it can be for tension and irritability. All right, let's talk about the word pungent. Chamomile has an aromatic and a pungent taste, and pungent is kind of a weird word. Some of you might immediately begin thinking of a skunk, but that's not what I mean. So let's define pungent. Herbs that are considered to have a pungent taste are often aromatic, so they're high in essential oils. And if you crush the herbs and smell them, they'll have a strong scent. Sometimes they're spicy, like cayenne. They're often warming and stimulating. And many of our culinary herbs are considered to be pungent herbs. We turn to pungent herbs to warm things up and to get things moving. Chamomile has a deliciously rich aromatic smell, and chamomile's pungent properties are shown within its ability to promote stagnant digestion. Chamomile is a carminative herb, which means that it helps to expel excess gas. There are so many beautiful ways to work with chamomile. It's easy and fun to grow in your garden. It can also grow really well in containers, and plucking chamomile flowers is a relaxing way to spend your morning. You can do it one by one, or you can fashion your hands into a kind of rake. Or if you grow lots of chamomile, you can actually get a chamomile rake, and then you can harvest more efficiently. And you can work with chamomile either fresh or dried. One of my favorite things to do with the fresh flowers is to make a floral infused water. And making this is so simple. You just put some flowers in a jar, you fill that jar with room temperature water, you let that sit for about 30 minutes or in the fridge overnight, and then strain that off and drink the water. And the result is this lightly flavored and refreshing drink that is so pretty and fun to make. Chamomile is commonly used as a dried herb, and I recommend getting it as a bulk herb as opposed to a tea bag. You really want those brightly colored flowers that are wonderfully aromatic. Chamomile makes a lovely, simple tea. Depending on how much chamomile you use and how long you steep it, it can have varying effects. So a couple teaspoons of dried chamomile infused into a cup of water for 5 minutes creates a lovely tasting brew. But as you increase the amount of chamomile that you use and you increase the steeping time, the bitter taste becomes more noticeable, those aromatics become more noticeable, and the relaxing properties are more intensely felt. In the Flowers recipe ebook that you'll be able to download, I've included a recipe for friendship tea. This is the perfect tea to share with a friend or loved one. In addition to chamomile, it includes oat straw, tulsi, rose petals, and lavender. And this is a beautiful tea blend to make in large quantities, just as like the herbs themselves, and then gift that to a friend with instructions on how to make the tea, because it's so beautiful to gift. One of my favorite ways to work with chamomile is as an infused oil. I love rubbing this on my face and body just before going to sleep. And the infused oil just on itself, so just chamomiles infused into oil, is lovely. And then for an extra luxurious treat, you can add blue chamomile essential oil to the blend. And in this image, what you see is the yellow container is just plain chamomile infused oil. And then when you add the blue chamomile oil, you get that green color. One of my favorite ways to also enjoy chamomile is as a bath. And if you haven't had a chamomile bath, then you have something profoundly relaxing to look forward to. Steeping your body in chamomile tea relaxes the body, soothes the mind, and is the ultimate comfort. Chamomile is a very safe herb for most people. However, a small percentage of people are allergic to plants in the Asteraceae family, which includes chamomile. So if you know you're allergic to chamomile, then it's best to avoid it. And if you know you're allergic to plants in the Asteraceae family, then you want to approach chamomile with some caution. Chamomile gives the gift of relaxation and reminds us to prioritize time to relax each day. Chamomile also allows us to practice receiving comfort. In today's often stress-filled and busy days, it's a powerful act to stop, to slow down, to relax, and to receive comfort. Chamomile also reminds us how powerful it is to offer the gift of comfort to others. To receive and give comfort are precious, precious things. Jim sums up chamomile's teachings here. Gentle does not mean weak. After having dismissed chamomile for so many years, I now can't imagine being without it. There hardly goes a day that I'm not drinking chamomile tea, taking chamomile bath, or using chamomile infused oil. And I know it's an herb I can trust to do so many things, yet it's gentle enough to be used every day. Oh, rose. Roses, especially wild roses, are known for their alluring beauty and scent. These are one of my favorite plants to harvest or wildcraft as they grow abundantly where I live. And when I come upon a rose briar, what I love is that I often hear and smell that the rose briar is coming up before I even see it. There's the gentle scent of the flowers, which permeates the air. And then there's the buzzing of busy bees as they create the steady low hum. And it's easy for me to imagine that it's the hum of contentment. And the smell is so divine. If roses only offered their enticing taste and smell, I'd still be over the moon about them, but their gifts extend beyond this. Energetically, rose is both cooling and astringent, and they are classified as having a sour taste. They work especially well for signs of heat and for lax tissues. Didn't realize I had that on a little, took an additional clicks there. Sour herbs wake up our senses. They enliven digestion and are often filled with antioxidants and flavonoids, which can modulate inflammation. The sour taste is filled with a wide range of flavors, from the puckering sour of lemon to the sweet sour of many fruits. Herbs within the sour taste often are strong protectors. For example, elderberries, bilberries, and blueberries protect our eyes. And roses also offer protection in several different ways. Another quality of the sour taste is astringency. Astringency is a powerful herbal action that describes the ability of a substance to tighten and tone tissues that are lax. Examples of this include a swollen throat or wounds. You've probably experienced astringency if you've ever eaten a banana that wasn't quite ripe, it was still kind of green, or if you've sipped a really strong cup of black tea. One application for the astringent properties of roses can be seen in this study from 2011. In this double-blind, placebo-controlled study, a mouthwash made with rose extract was shown to be more effective than the placebo in the treatment of recurrent canker sores. The researchers reported that those using the rose extract had less inflammation and a reduction in the size and numbers of ulcers. Herbalists also turn to roses to protect the heart. Roses bring joy to the heart. We gift roses as signs of love and friendship, and how could they not lift our hearts? Roses know how to bloom. They've enthralled humans for centuries with their ability to slowly open their tightly closed buds and bloom with radiance. But roses also know the importance of boundaries. You cannot approach roses thoughtlessly. They demand mindfulness and presence. Otherwise, the thorns, or as they're known botanically, the prickles, will provide a harsh reminder that roses require respect. Roses tell us, bloom wildly, love intensely, but keep your boundaries. My friend Damiana loves roses, and she shares, roses lovingly hold us and help create strong boundaries to protect us so that we can soften and open our hearts wide. There are many cultivars of roses, and they also easily hybridize, so getting a positive ID is somewhat difficult. Roses often grow as dense thickets or even as a climbing or trailing plant. Unlike their hybridized cousins, wild roses only have 5 petals. They don't have tons of petals. And wild rose flowers tend to be white, pink, and sometimes yellow. The leaflets are pinnately divided. They have little toothed edges on them. And as mentioned, the stems and sometimes the leaves have thorns or prickles. Rose thorns don't just protect themselves. The brambles are home to many, including small creatures like mice and voles, and bunnies and foxes and birds. Working with roses opens the heart and is a true sensorial delight. The smell of their flowers is so alluring, and the sweet, satiny feel of the petals is so divine. There are countless kinds of roses out there. All can be used as remedies, but I prefer the ones that have an aromatic scent. So if I give a smell and there's no scent, I don't use it. You're also definitely going to want to avoid any roses that have been sprayed with chemicals. And you never really want to use roses from florists unless, it's from a forest that doesn't use chemicals. In your Spring Flowers recipe ebook, you'll find 2 delicious recipes for rose. The first is rose petal honey, one of my very favorite treats. I've made this every year for well over a decade, and I make about a half gallon of it a year. And we love it in my family. We love it drizzled over French toast, over ice cream, stirred into tea. There's so many wonderful applications for rose petal honey. The other reason I make so much of it is because it makes a gorgeous gift to give. I'm also sharing a recipe for a rose and strawberry shrub. This is a sweet, tangy, delicious cooling drink that you can easily make with just a few ingredients, including apple cider vinegar and honey. I love drinking shrubs after I've been working outside on a warm spring day. I come in, I'm warm, I'm hot, and I'm been kissed by the sun, and these are just so cooling. They quench thirst and really help you to cool down. This is one of my very favorite recipes. Our invitation from Rose. First, open your heart with boundaries. Second, to love fully with boundaries. And lastly, to revel in the sensorial experiences of Rose. Our next spring flower is the sunny dandelion. Dandelions tell us that spring is here. Often among the first flowers to emerge, especially in northern climates, dandelions bring important early nectar to honeybees and lift the hearts of all who anticipate longer days and warmer temperatures. The golden orbs fill lawns and meadows and even appear between the cracks in the concrete. Every part of the dandelion, from the roots and the leaves and the flowers and seeds, generously offers food and medicine. Dandelion is an opportunistic plant that originated in Eurasia and spread all the way to temperate climate zones of the world. Europeans have long loved the plant as food and medicine, and most likely intentionally and perhaps sometimes unintentionally brought the seeds with them to North America. But over time, the desire for the perfect lawn has engendered this common disdain for this beautiful plant. Today, consumers spend billions, that's billions with a B, of dollars on ecologically harmful herbicides for their lawns, mostly to eradicate dandelions. But like all good rebels, the dandelions are irrepressible. This is an astute observation from Guido Mazet, herbalist and author of The Wild Medicine Solution and DIY Bitters. Despite all the energy and chemicals that are spent trying to eradicate dandelions, they still thrive. Dandelions are tenacious, they're resilient, they ignore all the haters, and they just keep going on and they keep going strong, continuing to spread themselves widely. So what's their secret? What can we learn? Well, I'm sure they have many secrets, but here's one way we can imaginatively experience dandelions' gifts. So I'd like to invite you to do a short exercise with me right now. This is something I recently did with my own mentor, Thea Elijah, who's a 5-element practitioner. And it's really important that you experience this, not just think about it. So please join in. If we were in a classroom right now, I would stare at you all until you stood up and get peer pressure involved. But I can't do that. So I just have to invite you, please join in. If you are in a place where you can stand right now, please do so. And if you can't stand right now, you can also do this while sitting. So while you're standing, at first, you don't need to give a lot of thought to how you're standing. In fact, your efforts right now can go all the way into reaching your hands and arms into the sky. And this isn't a stretch, it's a reach. So reach so high that it almost feels like your feet are coming off the ground. Your whole body is yearning to go up. You can even sway here a little bit, just really feeling that upward energy. Okay, now you can come back down to the earth, shake it off. And now we're going to do that again. But this time we're going to root ourselves first. So as you stand, bring your attention to the feel of your foot on the ground and imagine that contact reaching far below the surface. Even if you're on a second-story floor like I am, you can imagine those energetic roots grounding you deeper and deeper into the earth. And now with that downward energy intact, you're going to reach again. This time, as your hands reach for the sky, also keep your awareness with that deep grounding energy through your feet. Maybe you want to sway here a bit again, and really just enjoy the sensation of those opposing, or we could even say balancing energies. Okay, shake it off. So if we were sitting in a classroom right now, I'd ask to hear about all of your experiences, but since that's not really possible, maybe some of you will want to put it in the chat. But I'll just share my own experience with this exercise. So when I reach without grounding, I feel really weak. I feel totally unstable, and it just feels completely unsustainable. But when I'm firmly rooted, I feel stronger and more capable. So I wanted to do this experience here today with all of you because it's important not to forget our roots, even when we're enamored with flowers. It's important to remember that we need to root first in order to reach our highest. That resilience comes from strong roots. We wouldn't have flowers without roots. Dandelions are able to give generously because of their tenacious, deep roots. Dandelions are so serious about their roots that if you dig a dandelion root, but you leave some of the roots behind, the dandelion will just grow again. That's resilience. The energetic qualities of dandelion leaves and flowers are like spring itself, fresh, moving, stimulating. The leaves are drying due to their digestive and mild diuretic effects. Both the leaves and the flowers are cooling in nature. Consider dandelion leaves and flowers for any type of sluggishness, whether it's the winter blues or stagnant fluids. Dandelion is known for its bitter taste. The bitter taste, easily one of the most important tastes in herbal medicine, and many of our favorite herbs, like dandelion, have some degree of bitterness. But let's be honest. The bitter taste is one that people most love to hate. We despise the bitter taste so much that we've essentially bred it out from most of our foods. But bitters are making a comeback because more and more people are realizing how beneficial this flavor is. The bitter flavor enhances digestion, increasing a wide range of digestive secretions that help us break down everything from carbohydrates to proteins to fats. When dandelion leaves are young and tender, they have a slightly bitter taste that stimulates digestion. For this reason, the leaves are considered a spring tonic, something that's taken to enliven digestion after a winter of heavy meats and stored vegetables. Although we don't typically go without fresh foods for all of winter, dandelion leaves are still relevant today. They are some of our most nutrient-dense greens and can be considered a daily spark to maintaining healthy digestion. Spend a sunny morning picking bright yellow dandelion flowers, and you'll undoubtedly experience one of dandelion's side effects. They bring joy and laughter to those who spend time with them. This simple gift is perhaps one of the most profound that dandelion has to offer. What is more precious than joy? If that's not enough, then wait a while. And as the yellow blooms turn to seed heads, dandelions offer up another gift, free wishes. And I assure you that no one is ever too old to get free wishes. In addition to vitamins and minerals, dandelion flowers are high in flavonoids. One study looked at dandelion leaf and flower extracts and determined that the flowers have especially high flavonoid content. The study concluded they may be beneficial for diseases associated with oxidative stress. Is about flowers. As I mentioned, we don't want to forget the roots. Dandelion roots offer liver health support, promote robust digestion, and aid symptoms of elimination. They're a wonderful nutrient-dense food that is slightly bitter. Dandelions are so common and so well known, but there's some very similar looking plants out there. So it's easily to be mistaken unless you know for certain how to identify dandelion. So dandelion leaves grow from a central point and they can be anywhere from 2 to 14 inches long. They often have a toothed appearance. The leaves are smooth, not hairy. Some lookalikes have hairy leaves. So if you see a plant kind of looks like dandelion with hairy leaves, it's not dandelion. Each flower grows from a single stem, which is a hollow stalk. And that's an important distinction as well, because some lookalikes have multiple flowers growing from one stem. As mentioned, every year, billions of dollars are spent on herbicides attempting to eradicate the dandelion. So you want to harvest dandelions in an area that hasn't been poisoned. And the general rule of thumb is for at least 3 years. Potential lookalike plants include cat's ear, hawkweed, sow thistle, chicory when it's not in flower, and young wild lettuce. Many beings rely on dandelion for food, ranging from small insects to mammals, including rabbits, groundhogs, pocket gophers, deer, elk, and even bears. The flowers provide nectar and pollen to insects like honeybees, native bees, bee flies, and hoverflies. After the blooms have gone, small birds are known to eat the seeds. Dandelion grows abundantly and generously offers us so many gifts, and spring is the perfect time to relish in dandelion-inspired foods. Dandelion flowers are a delight to include in baked goods. The cake that you see here is sweetened with maple syrup and includes dandelion flowers inside the cake as well as a garnish. This recipe is from our book, Wild Remedies. It's easily one of the most popular recipes in the entire book, and I included it in your spring recipes ebook. The dandelion flower cake goes really well with another favorite tea blend. This is my Love Your Liver tea blend, and it has roasted dandelion roots, roasted chicory roots, cacao, turmeric, black pepper, and orange peel. And the result is this really rich roasted brew that's just absolutely delicious. Dandelion offers us many invitations, and the first is a gift of playfulness. Whether you're making a crown of dandelions for your head or getting free wishes, dandelion reminds us to simply have fun. And as we experience through the exercise, dandelion's secret to giving generously is to be rooted. We too can give generously when we are firmly rooted. And lastly, dandelion doesn't listen to the haters. Dandelion gets so much negativity thrown at it, but it just keeps on thriving and giving to those who can appreciate all the gifts that dandelion offers, whether it's humans, bees, birds, or even bears. Well, our last flower is the beautiful poppy. Poppies love to cover fields and mountainsides, and depending on the species, it may bloom in every color you can imagine. I love visiting France in the springtime, and one of my favorite sites are the feral poppy fields. Those playful, vibrant colors seem to call out. Come play for a while. Bring a picnic. Let's soak in this beautiful day. So what is a poppy? In botanical classification, the poppy family has over 15 genera and over 700 species. Here's a couple of species that you are probably familiar with. There's Papaver somniferum. This is the plant that morphine and opium are derived from. It's also where we get our popular edible seeds from. Humans have been working with this plant since before written history. Images of these poppies have been found in ancient Sumerian artifacts from about 6,000 years ago. Its native range probably began in Eastern Mediterranean, but it's spread widely. Papaver roeus, or field or corn poppy, grows all over temperate climates and may have originated in Northern Africa and Southern Europe. This poppy thrives in disturbed soils. It'll grow abundantly in agricultural fields. And because it grew so readily on the graves of soldiers in World War I, it has become a symbol of remembrance for veterans of both world wars. In North America, we have several native poppies, one of which is Eschscholzia californica, which is a native to the west coast of the United States and Mexico. In super bloom years, these orange flowers can cover hillsides in a brilliant and colorful display. And because of their brilliant colors and beauty, poppies are commonly grown as ornamental flowers, and there are many hybrids and colors available. Poppies are both cooling and relaxing. The flowers have long been a symbol of sleep, peace, and death. In ancient Greece, poppies were strongly associated with Morpheus, the god of sleep and dreams. In more modern times, Morpheus returned, offered us the choice between the red and blue pill. And my first presentation for Free Herbalism Project several years ago was based on The Matrix, the movie. I kid you not, I was able to weave herbs and the Matrix together, but that's probably a bit tangential now, so I'll just set my Matrix fandom aside. So poppies bloom voraciously. They can cover hillsides and fields. During super bloom years, the views of California poppy on the west coast of North America are stunning. There's something incredibly freeing about seeing such lavish abundance, such a vivacious display of beauty. When the conditions are right, poppies go all out. They don't hold back, and in so doing, they call many beings to them. Bees and other insects love to gather the abundant pollen from poppy flowers. I visited poppy flowers with countless bees edging each other out to get their fill. It can be quite the sight. Humans also flock to see poppy blooms, which has created some problems. As one newspaper reported, poppy apocalypse. California town forced to shut down a super bloom hillside viewing after being overrun by Disneyland-sized crowds of flower-crazed tourists trying to pose for photos, which has created some signs like this: area closed, do not enter. Your poppies, thank you. Poppies remind us that we need to love with respect. We can appreciate beauty, fall head over heels with poppies, but in order for that beauty to remain, we must also show respect. Or as Edna St. Vincent Millay wrote, "Summer set lip to earth's bosom bare, and left the flesh print in a poppy there. I will touch 100 flowers and not pick one." Poppy flowers are beautiful to behold, and simply being able to spend time with them is a gift. And after they go to seed, they offer this rich, nutty flavored seeds that can be made into delicious treats. In your Spring Flowers ebook, you'll find a recipe for poppy nougatine. This is a nut, honey, and poppy seed blend based on traditional recipes from France. And you'll also find my recipe for lemon balm poppy seed cake, which is a great treat for a spring picnic. Poppy shows us how to be unapologetically vibrant, to let our colors show, and in so doing, we can spread beauty abundantly. Poppy also invites us to enjoy spring picnics, to prioritize important activities like cloud gazing and daydreaming, without trampling the flowers, of course. It's springtime, the flowers are beckoning. How will you be present to fully steep in their ephemeral beauty? I had the hard choice of choosing just to share a few flowers with you today. And I will say that my cat was disappointed I didn't share the amazing virtues of catnip. Maybe you have some favorite flowers that I didn't get to today, but there are so many flowers, so little time. The good news is that our flower-filled days are just beginning. As promised, I want to help inspire you to invite spring flowers into your life. So I've created an ebook with the 13 recipes that you saw in this presentation. You can download your free copy by visiting herbswithrosalee.com/mrh.html. And if you liked this presentation and loved learning about herbal medicine, herbal energetics, and nature connection, then let's stay in touch. Once you use that link, you have the opportunity to join my free course on herbal energetics, which explores the 5 tastes of herbal medicine more in depth, so you can choose the best herb for you. I've gathered our flower invitations here on one slide, and I invite you to choose a few that call out to you and then fully embrace them. It's one thing to read something and something else entirely to fully immerse yourself within it. It's like the exercise we did with reaching and grounding with Dandelion as our guide. Once you actually experience something, it becomes a part of you, not just something that sounds good in your head, but then you forget when it's back to the daily grind of your life. As Rachel Carson said, it's not half so important to know as to feel. For me, working directly with flowers and herbs is my way to feel and to know. When I gather the flowers and roots of dandelion, I think about my own ability to ground so I can then give generously. When I sip chamomile tea or use chamomile infused oil on my skin, I sink into comfort and relaxation. When I kiss the violets as they're waking up, I think of how much I love Tori Amos. Also, what a joy it is to be alive. And when I see a field of poppies, I celebrate one's ability to live vivaciously, to be vibrant and to flourish. My hope is that this ephemeral beauty of spring and flowers awakens all of this in you too. Thanks so much for Mountain Rose Herbs for inviting me to be a part of this free herbalism project. Thanks to all of you for being here. And here's to the many gifts and lessons of spring flowers.
Wow, that was fantastic. I loved all the images and just getting to kind of jump right into all of those flowers. So thank you for that. And yeah, I know the link to the ebook has been posted, which is very generous. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to Lucretia's talk. So yay.
Thank you.
What a fun day.
And there is Lucretia. Perfect. So we just immersed ourselves in flowers, and now we're going to learn a little bit more about the flower people. Lucretia VanDyke is going to talk to us about Appalachian herbalism, and I'm kind of curious if that's a term you coined, or if it's not, if it's like one that's been around.
It's a thing. It's really a thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad it's a thing. So, as it would make sense, you're going to be talking about women of color, herbalists in the South, and you are a lifelong plant person, herbalist. Like, you learned from the mud puddles and from making potions in the woods as a kid, and then, now you're an educator, speaker, so much more, over 20 years of experience. So Lucretia is going to bring us these stories of people of color that have been at the center of herbal health care forever. And through time. So I cannot wait to see these stories and these people come alive. So take it away, and thank you so much.
Hi, y'all. Welcome. I'm coming to you from Asheville, North Carolina. And I'm so, so, so grateful for this space that Mountain Rose Herbs has blessed me and my people with, to share these stories and to really talk about our connection to herbalism. I wrote a blog piece in February, so if you haven't checked it out, check it out. Some of the women that I'll be talking about today are in the piece. But just like February is a short month, it's really hard to really give the embodiment of what the Indigenous and people of color have done. So today, it is important in the way that I study it in our traditions that we pour libations. Libations is an offering to the ancestors, but we also do it when we make plants. I've traveled around the world from Southeast Asia and have been blessed with so many Indigenous cultures embracing me and showing me their traditions. So I see libation pours happening so much. So today is my grandmother's birthday also. And so I thought I would make something that was a kind of a twist on the Southern drink, sweet tea, but we add in some lemonade. And I love all the talk of flowers because I have some flower essences in there. So what I did was, if you could all see that, I started out with an herbal infusion, and I'll make sure Mountain Rose Herbs gets this recipe and links it with my blog post that will be coming out in April. So this is an herbal infusion of Yaupon holly, which is a great native to North America tea. It's our caffeinated tea. So it's equal parts Yaupon holly, holy basil, butterfly pea flower, which it gives it that beautiful blue tint to it, and then also a little lavender. So what I'm going to do is add that into a half a glass of lemonade. And we're making purple magic, just like Rosalee just blessed us and showed us all those flowers. And so this is just a beautiful libation that we're going to do to honor our ancestors, honor your ancestors, and honor the plants for being here today. And it's super good. All right, I can't wait to get started. So one of the first things that I learned in herbalism is that there wasn't as many stories that were people who looked like me. We heard all the songs and all the things and everybody singing to the plants. But what I found was I didn't really have my own song. So it led me deep into researching how we came into herbalism and how far the lineage goes back for people of color. So I really was excited when I started studying with different people. So one of the first things I'm going to share with you is the story behind me finding my song and the song of my people to honor the plants and what we sing when we harvest and make medicine. This comes from the Yoruba tradition. It's an orisha, which is kind of like, I guess, for lack of a better word, a god or goddess, but orishas really are in the Yoruba tradition what we call the personification of the elements. And so the orisha for plants is Osine. And the beautiful woman, Louisa Tesh, we call her Yiyi Louisa Tesh. Yiyi is mother. She taught me this song. And she talked about this orisha who is the living embodiment of the plants. Osan is always this older man who has one eye, one arm, one leg, and one ear. But he can see farther than other people. He can hear more clearly. He can dance better, and he can work faster. And that is our people's connection to the plants. That's how powerful the plants are to us. So I would love to sing you a little song. I'm not as beautiful as the other beautiful. We got graced with the music earlier. But I would love to just sing you a song that symbolizes what we sing. It's Osine, Ade. Ade is the crown. It's also like anointing. Ashe, Ashe is the power that comes out. It's the commanding of the elements. Akoko is a sacred vessel that we would put the plants in. So it's Osine Ade, Ashe de Akoko, Ashe de Akoko, Ashe de Akoko. So what we're doing is we're honoring the plants. We're calling in the energy of the plants. As Rosalee talks about the vibration of the plants that come in and love us, we're really homing in on that as we come through and we're picking them, we're putting them in our aprons and like our grandmothers did, and we're putting them in our pillowcases or in our pockets. I don't know if any of you are like me. I've been shoving plants in places for such a long time. So this brings me to one of the first women that I really want to talk about, and who is the living embodiment of that. So the first story tells you who we were before we came here, what the bones and the indigenous essence of us and the power of how we see the plants. So as we see that transform here on American soil, you know, eons and eons later, we see that with Emma Dupree. Emma Dupree is a fellow North Carolina girl. She was one of the first Black herbalist women that I found out about. Emma Dupree, they called her Little Medicine Thing. She had, from the age of 2, was also picking plants up. When kids were playing, Emma was on the ground. She was looking at roots. She was looking at leaves, and she was bringing all of these things back home and making decoctions since the time she was a little girl. Emma always said that God was the one that was her teacher, and nature told her what the plants did. So I really see Emma coming into that almost like a plant spirit medicine, which that's the way that I love to study the plants, and the way that I feel like they tell us a lot of their stories, and the way that we can really feel the energetic vibrations of the plants. So Emma, ever since she was a little girl, a little medicine thing, she would make these decoctions. As she grew older, she became the town herbalist. So Emma would have a very famous 9-herb tonic. I've been on this research. What 9 herbs did she put in there? So this little tiny woman would have this cauldron outside with an open fire. So she would put these herbs and decoct them down. And a lot of people said they resembled what looked like tobacco spit and smelled like turpentine. So she was really like in there, and they said the whole neighborhood would smell like it. Emma was really into mint. So there is a documentary that they did on her called Little Medicine Thing. And I put that in the link, I think, as a reference in my last blog. But they show her going through her garden. So she had white mint, mountain mint, which is just such a beautiful, I just got to meet that plant like 2 years ago. She would also use catnips, mullein. All of us have been hearing so much about mullein. I love that plant. She would decoct that in. She would also use tansy, things like that, sassafras root, all of those things that she would decoct over a long time And then she would pour them in these little jugs, and people would come and they would pay $3 to whatever they could. And they always talked about Emma. They said it was the gift of her presence that was the true medicine of who she was. They said you could talk out, you know, we Southerners have our little lingo. You could talk out any problem with Emma and you just left and you felt better. So we all think about, well, we're as herbalists and as people, as we move through this world, and as we've been so separate, understanding the gift of presence, it also brings such an element to medicine making, and as a community. So Emma not only saw Black and white, she was the herbalist for the entire town. And when she passed away, so many people talk about so many of the pearls of knowledge that she left with. I'm in search of going out for these stories, and so many people ask, is there going to be a book? There will be a book. I'm working on it. I'm working on collecting the stories from the elders so I can bring these back to show you more. So Emma teaches us so much. She teaches us that all of us have this inner love of the plants. I've been playing with them since I was little. I would love to share with you a quote that talks about ancestor connection and us with the plants. Plant knowledge is your ancestral right. You are the product of billions of who came before you, and in your direct ancestral lineage, you would not exist today if your ancestors weren't deeply connected to the medicine ways of the earth. You are proof of their wisdom, which still lives inside of you, deep in your marrow, waiting to be activated. No one needs to give you permission to reclaim your ancestral knowing. It is already yours. Amber Magnolia Hill wrote that. So when we go to really understand the plants, people get so much caught, I think, in the book knowledge, which is really beautiful, but there's so much more that inertly is in us. And when we activate that and study our ancestral roots and how they connect to plant medicine, we really understand. I learned so much more that I didn't realize being with the grandmothers and the elders. So this has been very passed on in our families. And as I teach about my ancestors, my ancestor connection, I get these glorious messages from other people who talk about their ancestors, and they start to research, oh, I came from a Jewish background. My people use honey in these medicines. Oh, I came from, a Latin background. We use rue in our spiritual baths. So Emma teaches us that we all have this thing inside of us. And when we can activate that and really get in with the plants and be with them, like I love when Rosalee was talking about the best way to learn about the violets is like laying with them. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was what I did. I would lay in these fields of passion flower. And I did not realize that that was the medicine I even needed as a child. So I really, really highly encourage you walk around your yard and see what Mother Nature has gifted you, much like Emma did. And we use those resources, much like my people have, much like the indigenous people did. What is in your backyard? I spent a lot of time studying in Southeast Asia, and spirit came to me. It's like, you need to settle in at home and learn the plants. Luckily in North Carolina, we are just a plethora of all kinds of beautiful plants and things that are here. So a next girl, is North Carolina girl that I'm going to talk about, is Mary Hayden. Mary Hayden was one of the second women that came forward to me in my research. Mary Hayden was here locally near Asheville in Swannanoa, North Carolina. She was the granny midwife, which is what we called the medicine women. They were usually older women, Black women, descendants of enslaved people. And that's where they learned it in Africa. That was passed on. So they were the people who were birthing both white and Black babies. The granny midwives were the bridge to communities because they were the only form of healthcare that poor and mountain folk had at that time. So Mary Hayden became a very pivotal person in how the whole Swannanoa area, in Black Mountain area, Asheville area even, her little self, I got to interview her great-granddaughter. I was very excited to see these family members coming forward also and gifting me with the stories. But she would take her little tiny self and take her little knapsack and take her little lantern and climb over the mountain at night to go birth anyone's baby. Even if you hadn't paid before, that wasn't really a concern for her. She had a passion for the community, a passion for healthcare, a passion for just giving people a safe space, no matter what color, no matter who you are. She's a living embodiment of how my people learn to use the herbs to turn towards each other instead of away from each other, and to be a pivotal part of bridging that gap of community. So there is a really funny story that her great-granddaughter gifted me with. Well, not really funny at the time. She was coming back home after birthing a child really late at night, and she had got paid in a piece of meat. And so as she was going, a catamount, which is a very large, mountain animal, started smelling the meat. So she had to start taking everything off and running as fast as she could to get back home. I was just like, oh, what? I think about these women in these times. This is post-slavery. She had even a memory of someone coming by and saying that you were free. And she was like, that was the most wonderful thing she had ever heard. And so you think about how resilient she was and used her love of the plants and her love of people. She also was the pivotal person during the Spanish flu epidemic. One of her folk remedies, which most of us are, my granny always used it, was onion cough syrup. That was her first line of defense. That was the only thing she had. Slow roasting the onions with a little bit of sugar and a little water, decocting those down and giving those in spoonfuls to everyone she could in the community. I like to add in a little bit of extra thing with that, some sassafras bark, wild cherry bark, those kind of things. I like to take the old and kind of blend it in and check out something new. So Mary Hayden, it wasn't until about 1932 that Asheville actually got its first hospital for people of color. But let you know, the mountain folk, both white and Black, did not have a car, did not have money to pay for these doctors. So that's again why the granny midwives were so important to the area. She also was part of the program when they started banning and putting more control over midwifery. She actually went to the hospitals and the doctors and got clean and sanitary equipment to pass out to the other midwives of the area. And she's actually registered as a midwife if you look her up in North Carolina history. Thank you, Mary Hayden. Thank you for loving the community. Thank you for sharing your medicine. We so much appreciate you. Another woman that I find very fascinating is Henrietta Jeffries. She was another midwife that was also in North Carolina. Henrietta Jeffries was like the midwife of the area. She always was of service. She actually, at the time, they had banned midwifery. And so she still practiced her medicine and making sure she could provide all people in her community safe births. Well, she was brought to trial. And at that time, it was punishable by death. And so Henrietta was found guilty by a jury of 12 white men. And the whole community came together, everyone. And the judge asked, who has been birthed by this woman? And everybody stood up. And a lot of people believe that the judge himself was also birthed by her. So she was set free and she continued to birth babies up until her death. And she was, I think, 80 years old at the time of her death. So Henrietta Jeffries is one of the most powerful women. I feel like that I am just so comfortable. That's why I'm a big caregiver of midwives and a very big person of telling the stories and how these grandmothers of a modern American herbalism, even despite what could have happened to them, it was still important for them to carry this medicine, to provide these spaces for the community. I've been very very lucky to have studied underneath some of the great minds and healers. And I think that as we move forward as a community, as a planet, as a country, that we have to look at herbalism and we have to look at healing from a holistic point of view. There's not an Indigenous person that does not look at the body, the mind, and the spirit when they're looking about health. And I feel like that a lot of times when we don't think about the energetic nature of the plants and bringing in the vibrations of the flowers, as Rosalee talked about, of, the magic that plants have. We know that they have these medicinal components, but it's the magic of them. And when we understand how we can work on all parts of us, so we know pretty much the mind, meditation, music. We know about the body. We take the plants and we exercise. But what about the spirit? How do we nourish the spirit? Spirit is one of the first things that indigenous cultures look at when they look at a person. One of my teachers I was very grateful to be with was Subonfu Somé. Subonfu Somé taught me, she comes from Burkina Faso in Africa. So she taught me the importance of community. So we're going to do a little exercise. Her people, the Dagara, have a cosmology wheel. It has the elements there. So each element is always based on the last year of when you were born. And so when you were born, the whole village knew how to support you and where they should be with you and how your place in the village is. So I thought it would be interesting for us to see what your elemental nature is and also see what your place in the village is. Subonfu would set this up and when we would do her grief rituals, but it's very important to really talk about the role of each person and your sacred gift. So our first element is fire. Fire is the portal to the ancestor realm. The last year, if you are a 7 or a 2, then you are a fire element. Your job is like intuition, energy, passion. It's kind of like you're that person that almost like gets the party started a little bit. And it's also like you're the keeper of almost like the ancestors. You're this opening direct there. So like you're sometimes the person who helps family issues, or you're sometimes the person who is just generally interested in your genealogy. The next one, which I am, is 6 and 1. It's water. Water, Subonfu always talked about when there was conflict in the village, they were like, where's the water? So we all know when we're sitting next to water that we feel calmer. So anyone who has the last year of your birth that's a 6 or a 1, you are a water element. We also talk about emotion. We do a grief. Grief was one big thing for Subonfu. She had these grief rituals. And right now we're all grieving on so many levels. We miss each other. This is so beautiful. I wish I could see everybody. And so grief in the water element, which is 6 and 1, is her rituals. We would all get together and we would hold space for each other. We wouldn't try to fix it. We wouldn't try to do anything. It's just coming together in ceremony with the drumming, with the altars, with the prayers, with our connection to the Most High. And so the water element people, we tend to really help people navigate through their emotions. We tend to help say, okay, here's a common ground when we were all at conflict. Okay, let's see you, let's get together. We are very observant. We believe in unity and connection and reconciliation and resolution. So we're like, okay, here's the problem, but let's see each other in this one. So the water element, I don't know how many of you are water. Earth element is a 5 and 0. So 5 and 0 is earth. Earth people make you feel like home. They're just those people that give you that grounding element. They give you that beautiful connection to yourself. Anyone who you sit next to, they always are like, let me get you that drink, or let me get you that plate. Like that's usually how it is in the South. You need anything? Are you hungry? Those kind of things. And so the earth element, they're really into touch. They're caregivers. They're the nurses. Those are the big tasks that they have. I have a few friends that are earth elements, and they're just all making sure that you are okay. Mineral, a 9 and a 4. Minerals have, I feel it in my bones. Though people have a deep intuition, they have a knowing beyond knowing. They also are a lot good memory. They're good at listening. They always keep the keeper of stories. So, and also I find a lot of mineral people, you're supposed to be a teacher, but most of the mineral people are not teachers. And so I'm always like, okay, you're not living your sacred purpose. So I really encourage people to also like look deeper into this. And this is the Dagara cosmology wheel. You can look up Subamfu Sume to get a link to that. I'll include it also at the end of here. So mineral people, like the bone is what's left when everything is gone. So the deep knowing, so passing on the stories. Nature elements, 8 and 3 is your last one. Those are the people who really have the magic element. They really have the connection to nature. A lot of times in certain traditions, they're the witches or the warlocks, the ones who invoke and evoke the magic. Nature elements also, I find when I see small children who were born with the last year of 8 and 3, I like to share with the parents that they're going to have a difficult time in life, much more than the elements, because people see nature as they see themselves. And so if you're scared of nature and you don't like nature, then you're going to project that. So nature element people are a mirror to other people who don't really want to see their stuff sometimes. So I really like to really talk about nature and understand us as a village, how we need to support them. Say, I see you, I need to just look at myself a little deeper. So those are the elements of the Dagara. I know I see a lot of people like, oh, nature. It's like, it's people often, she talked about people are haters on dandelions, like people are really haters on nature elements. So I really feel like at the end of the grief ritual, Subamfu would always tell us to take a salt bath. Spiritual bathing, which is going to be my next blog post for Mountain Rose Herbs, is such an important part of Indigenous healing and Indigenous wellness in whole. These are using the plants for both their medicinal and energetic purposes to help move the elemental body, like the psychic mind. They're also moved any stagnant energy. So at the end of each grief ritual, she would go home and take a salt bath. Go home and take a salt bath. And so salt is a very purifying element. It's really beautiful for us right now, as we're all at home trying to figure out how to energetically move a lot of the grief. So I really suggest you and using the plants in your bath. Like we talked so much about Rosalee, and also before Bevin talked about the energy of the plants, like using those that are in your yard and creating these beautiful decoction teas and then pouring those in the bath water. I also find it very important. Subamfu was like, if we need to heal so the children heal. Our children are really at a confused state right now. So understanding how the village works and holding them in this sacred space and having to have the plants. One of my favorite spiritual baths for little children is lemon balm. I think is really beautiful. Lemon balm is heart medicine, heart healing. It also helps with grief. Our children are grieving. We're all grieving. So using this as a spiritual bath. Holy basil is another one that I love to use in spiritual bathing to remove it. It's often said it's used for PTSD issues. So using that in a practice of, brewing it in a tea and then bathing the children in it, just pouring a little bit in their bath water. Calendula is another really important one in spiritual bathing. I will also talk about that in my blog. But calendula helps, I think, bring light in also, but helps spread abundance in the body, abundance of joy, abundance of love. It just keeps it, even money. So it keeps it ever flowing. But when we think about this, even our flower essences, like today, my libation, the cocktail I had okra flower essence in it. Okra is a very important medicine for my people. It was so important that they braided the seeds in their hair when they were put on the ships to bring over. Okra as an energetic form helps move stagnant energy in the lower chakras. So when we think about other flower essences, rose flower essence, even the chamomile flower essence, how beautiful those things could be when we're trying to help our children move the feels that they're feeling, also helping ourselves move the feels that we're feeling, adding a little bit of that in their bath water, or putting a little bit of that in their tea with a little prayer of whatever you hold sacred. If there's a Bible verse that was really important to some of the women I talked about, Emma Dupree definitely prayed over her medicine. A lot of our herbalists pray over our medicine. You ask the plants to do what you want them to do and to put extra blessings. Our grandmothers, when they sat in the kitchen and they cooked those pots and like made those dinners that took like 5 and 6 hours, that was full prayer. And so we understand the concept of putting that in our medicine, especially in these times that so much is going on, that can add a certain level of healing. I saw somebody was like, okra has flowers. Yes, it does. And they are very beautiful. Okra is one of the plants that I grow from seed because it's part of a ceremony for me. I use it in a lot of my food, but I also love to use it a lot. You can use the pods in a spiritual bath also, again, helping you just move any stuck negative energy. You just take the pods and put them in water, boil them for a while, and then let them decoct, and then just use the water in your bath. And that's one of my favorite ones. But the flowers are really big. They're really beautiful. It's definitely one of my favorite ones. So you can put questions. I'll try to answer them there. If everybody has a lot of questions, I can save like 5 minutes at the end for it also. So we talked about Mary Hayden and Emma Dupree, two of my favorite North Carolina girls. We talked about Henrietta Phelps and how her important thing of just, and seeing how community can come together and help lift us all up in times of need. But I also thought that there was an interesting thing. There's many ports of entry to America when they came over. And New Orleans has definitely been such an important part of my research lately. And so I've been spending time both in the swamps during the pandemic in my little safe bubble, learning about the indigenous plants there, but also learning about the jambalaya of the melting pot of what really went on when all of the different people from all of the different countries were taken, and then all of the medicine spread. So one of the people I learned about, we were talking about community space and healing on multiple levels, was a lady named Mother Catherine Seals. Mother Catherine Seals, she really inspired me because in the Jim Crow era, she became a landowner and started a church where both white and Black would come together, and people from all colors in the area of New Orleans would come together, and they would worship and they would pray and they would have these ceremonies. Mother Catherine Seals is a very interesting person. When she passed away, her second line was it shut down New Orleans. Time magazine wrote about the importance of her. But I really figured out that the spiritual church movement is what they were calling that. In the South, if you've been in the South or have people from the South, you know, the tent revivals, those spaces that you would get together. This interesting thing happened in the conversion of what we were forced to leave in the old and try to embrace in the new. So things were hidden in plain sight. Women were wearing white, and they had these churches in their basements, and they were seeing people for spiritual healing. And when Catherine went to a white man asking for healing, he refused her because of her color. So she went home and said God told her to start this church. And she did in the lower 9th ward. The lower 9th is where most of the churches were in New Orleans. So what Mother Catherine did, from her sadness, she turned her pain into a purpose. She started the Temple of the Innocent Blood for unwed teenage mothers and people who didn't have a home. They couldn't go to these other spaces. So people would journey out into the swamp. White people attended the church. Everybody was together in Mother Catherine. She says, everyone is my babies. Everyone is my people. And so she would go through these intricate ceremonies of prayer and faith and music and laying of the hands. And again, using salts and oils to anoint people. I remember my first time I I have definitely always been a storyteller and a keeper of stories. And I love how we worship. I think it really brings us an open awareness of who each other are through what you worship and how you see the world. So collecting these stories, I just get inspired each time. I remember myself as a young person, I think I was around the age of 12 or 13. I went to a Pentecostal church, can get very loud, but I was so fascinated, and people would go up to the front and he would lay hands on them, which is what we call it. Some people call it Reiki. There's different words for it, but in the South, definitely in my culture, we call it laying of the hands. And so what would happen is people would go up there and they would be sad, and he would lay hands on them and have this prayer, or some people put his ashe in there, and people would walk away and just would feel better. So I remember being this young girl going, I don't know what that is, but I want to do that. And so my whole life began to be researching these stories and seeing these different cultures and seeing what that was, that feeling of seeing something anointed, or, I've been to different places around the world, seeing how the plants are used in the most magical ways. And that really holds space for people. I really have found, the spiritual bathing element, like taking the plants, we can only do that so many times a day. We think in our head, I take my whatever tincture times 3 or 4 times a day. We can do our herbal infusions and drink those, which are this long steeped infused teas for some of the new herbalists that are in the room. I can cook with it in every bit, take the dandelion root, take the greens, dress my salad with the flowers. But how can I address myself even more in my spiritual way? I can take the flower essences and ask for grief to be removed from my body. I can take the different herbs in a different way in the bath form. I can go lay with them out in the yard if you're blessed with that kind of space where you can see the plants and lay with the flowers. Take a little sip of my kata. I love the fact that, we talked about earlier, she was asking me if Appalachia was a thing. It is actually not a word that I coined. And when I started teaching this legacy class, I had other people come in because I had just found out about this word. So these students came in from Kentucky, and they were like, we came to your class because we heard this word. So Appalachia is the African Appalachian experience, Appalachia. And so that's another important reason, is that we see post-slavery, the whole Black Appalachian experience was erased. There's no stories. There are stories, but they weren't as heightened as you find with the white Appalachian experience. So I have a little quote that I would love to share for you that actually explains this and the whole concept of Appalachia. It says, Appalachia cannot be located on the map, yet it manifests in writers' words, the sounds of musicians, visual artists, and the creative network we continue to build. I seek out the makers and the truth tellers. I vow to honor the messy, bittersweet contrast of my home's region and historical challenges, and the courageous accomplishments of the artists, activists, and I like to add herbalists and healers, and the residents who want to build a better future. In 1948, a letter to Frederick Douglass, the journalist and abolitionist Martin Delany, said it best: "It is only in the mountains that I fully appreciate my existence of a person in America. And it is on my native land. And then and only then is where my soul is lifted, my bosom is caused to swell with emotion, and I am lost in the wonderful dignity of my own nature. This is why I pledge my allegiance to Appalachia." That was written by Marie T. Cochera. It was in a Rewire News article, because I was like, to myself, the South has such these bitter stories. And so when we find the way that the plants can connect us all in a different way, and how we both, my people, have both liberated and heal not only themselves, but communities wide. I see the opportunities that we continue to have, that we can grow and build communities using the plants as well. I see someone talked about, I'm from the Puerto Rican, my Tejano sisters and my Puerto Rican sisters. I'm starting to collect stories from there as well and talking to. So please reach out if you have any Indigenous stories about your family members, your grannies, your aunties or your TTs of any culture. I really want to collect these in the book and really share our medicine so we can continue to share the stories and how much Indigenous and people of color have added into the world of herbalism and healing. I have so many more stories that I would love to share with you. I see I want to answer some questions that I had seen pop up in there. I think someone asked about the fire element also. We have about 10 more minutes. Let me see. So anybody who wants to shoot any little questions in there. So the fire one was the first one that we have. And that one was also the 7. Hold on a second. What number? We want to look at the last year that you were born. So like I'm born in 1976. So a 6 would be your defining number. And so the village would also know how they were supposed to hold you up. So fire is number 7 and number 2. I also thought it was an interesting story that Subanfu would tell me about her people, because at this time, a lot of us are like, what am I doing? What is my purpose? The plants really can help us so much move forward with that. But also us as a community can help each other by seeing our individual traits. So one of my favorite ones about fear and anxiety and solar plexus and trying to understand is wood betony. That was one of the ones that help you move forward without fear. We definitely, when Subanfu talked about so much how the village supports each other, is that the mother would go into the forest and she would listen for the song of the child before the child would even be conceived. So she would hear the song come through from Spirit and the Most High. And then as you were being born, your song is being sung during your birth. And anytime you as a person in the community would fall short or, not find yourself in such a way, the village would sing you that song. And that song, the last time it was sung is during your transition to be an ancestor when you passed away. And that was the last time you sung that song. I see some people were talking about the onion decoction. Yes, you can also look up a video about the onion decoction that's also in folk medicine, but it's just a real simple remedy of taking a medium. I like to make large batches when I do my onion cough syrup because I do it as a preventative. Onions are really big. If you're in the South, honey, I've seen so many aunties and grandmas, as soon as that baby has a fever, they're like, put an onion slice on its feet. Put this on the sweet. So onion cough syrup is one of my favorite ones for this one. So just a medium onion to a large onion, slice it up, add in some sugar. Somebody said garlic. You can do garlic. I like that too. Those are some of my favorite ways to do that one. So we're just going to decoct that down for about 30, 45 minutes. Pour it off. If you don't want to do white sugar, you can add in honey. Molasses is another one. Molasses is definitely a big one here in the South. And one of my favorites. I'm trying to really get into it. It does have such a strong flavor to me. Molasses does. So when we come into understanding the last part, there's some people, I'll post the link during the next session so you can have something to reference to about the Daguerreau wheel and finding that, and also see some more information about Subanfu Sommet. And then I will also, Mountain Rose Herbs, if you want to see the link to the blog, if you go on their website, you can also see any type of blogs that are there. I am doing some online workshops and some classes. Somebody asked that in there. I'm also going to post a link to that in my next blog piece. We'll do another more in-depth version of this class, and then we'll also another class on spiritual bathing. So we'll have that as well. Book recommendations, definitely 400 Years of Working the Root. My friend Michelle E. Lee wrote that book. It's really important, I think, for all of us, again, to read about the connection, but it has a lot of great stories about the South. Michelle took 26 years to write that book, and she would seriously be in her truck and she would see an elder and she would follow them down a dirt road and ask them about how they use medicines and they use the different root work. She has some really fun information about poke salad. Poke is one of the interesting plants here, native in North Carolina, I find, because everyone is like, poke is a very scary plant for a lot of people in herbalism, which it should, but it has such a deep connection. So I really like the section on that to really introduce how our people used poke as one of the spring greens that come up for the lymphatic system and their old connection to the stories. I love it. So they have a link in there so you can look into the chat for the blog post that's in there. So one of the big ones I think about these kind of classes when I share is I want to get you all to do a few little exercises for yourself and some homework for the next one. Interview an elder in your family and ask them about their favorite meal that they had. Ask them about how they use the plants as well. If they could think of any type, if they remember a recipe or a remedy from their grandparents. And I think it's important to start writing these down as record keepers in our own families. I didn't really think about it, but as I began to teach people all across the country, I kept hearing these ancestor stories from people like, oh, my grandmother used to do that. And I'm like, that is also your connection to herbalism and helping each other figure out how to study the plants deeper, is seeing how your family was connected in the plant knowledge and the plant medicine. I see somebody's like, I'm the elder. I love that. And there's a lot of lovers of holy basil in there. I love that one as well. I just recently saw an article about Emma Dupree. They had another video. So Google her and you'll be able to see it. And another native plant that has a lot of connection here is tansy. So when people talk about tansy tea, it brings back this old Southern just love of the heart that's there. So I don't know if any of you have heard of tansy. I've just now started working with it in my practice because it has been mentioned by so many of the herbalists that I have studied and researched there. Blue tansy is one of them. Definitely. I haven't worked with the tansy essential oil. I'm excited about the next session because of essential oils that's there. I also wanted to bring back our attention. People were asking about the two first herbalists, Emma Dupree and Mary Hayden. Emma Dupree has been not as on the forefront of herbalism. A lot of times you see her with the photo of goldenrod. That's one of her most famous photos. The goldenrod she would use so much for allergies in her medicines and decocting. So that's one of the biggest pictures of her that you will see when we talk about her, or one of the images that is the most popular of her. So the one thing that is really important that we share is seeing the importance of our community herbalists, especially right now during our time together. And as I've seen so many beautiful things happen as far as community goes, and seeing how the old ways are starting to be activated, how people are sharing plants, they're seed sharing so much. They're also connecting, like in the herbalist world, I don't have this or I don't have that. Mountain Rose Herbs is providing this presentation to really get us back together. I love how these stories and how we all view the plants and how we can hear these different stories that Rosalee shared with us, and we'll see more with the essential oil. part there, how we can bring all of our medicine to create this like beautiful holistic world of healing, and how we're still, despite whatever is happening, using the plants to come back together time and time again, using their medicine and their energy. I would love to also, some of my favorite native plants, I brought some in to show you. I don't know if you can see it, but we talked about, people were asking about the cocktail that I made before and Yaupon holly. So these are some little leaves of Yaupon that's there. It's dried. It has such a great flavor. I use this one today because it really reminds me of when my grandmother would make sun tea. And that's one of the great recipes where you just put your tea and fill it up with water and then put it out in the sun all day. And so I remember watching the tea leaves dance around and like wait all day for this tea to appear at the end of the afternoon with dinner. And another one I put in here that's such a great medicine that I love right now, I dry honeysuckles in there. That's also, and I'll put the recipe, I'll have Mountain Rose Herbs share that with you with my blog post that's coming out in April. But this honeysuckle has such a sweet remedy, even though they're invasive and they come in. Honeysuckle to me is like really good grandmother medicine. So I really love to use it. It's also really great right now. I feel like I just saw a little bit come in a little early, but I just think that Mother Nature is a little confused right now. Yeah, honeysuckle definitely is one of my big favorites. This butterfly pea flower, you see these little plants that's there. We're talking about using the violets. Like violet is a very big medicine for me also. I love to make a lot of herbal infused oils with violets. I also love to use it as a heart healing medicine as well. And so I'm excited to get the ebook to use it in making these syrups and also making just any of these little purple things. Somebody was talking about honeysuckle in South Carolina. I think it's so funny how we all have these common stories about working with the plants and our ancestors, that it's beautiful to see all the responses from you and the responses that I have gotten back from the blog post about different people sharing, oh, my grandmother made that, oh, my grandmother made this. And so as we move forward, I have just a few minutes that I would love to do a little meditation with you all and come into our heart spaces. And I think it would be beautiful for you all to pick an herb that resonates with you and close your eyes and focus on the herb. And so this is what I call ancestor breathing. So a lot of times right now, we're very erratic in our thoughts and with things going on. So this breath will help connect you. So closing your eyes, focus on the plant. If you're drinking your tea, you can also just take a sip of your tea. So close your eyes, put your hands on your lower abdomen. Take a deep breath in, feel the stomach expand. Exhale out. Feel the energy go towards the feet into the ground. Imagining the legs being like old tree roots rooting you into the ground. So as you take a deep breath in, I want you to feel the love of the ancestors, your ancestors that are here for your highest and greatest good. And as you exhale out, I want you to imagine passing on things that no longer serve you. You don't even have to know what those are. The ancestors want to carry that. So inhale in the love of Mother Earth and all her plethora of plants and energy that she gives us. Exhale out. So we inhale in the love of the ancestors. Now I just want you to take a few minutes focusing on that plant that you've held in your spirit and see what kind of message it has to give you. Make a few notes in your journal about it. And this is a beautiful way for you to sit and study the plants. Taking your tinctures, drinking the tea, taking the deep breath. As we move forward in society into this part of the great unknown, I hope that all these classes and my stories have inspired you and the messages of everyone else on here. Thank you all so much for coming into the room with me, for listening to my stories, for listening about how I see the plants, listening a little bit about my journey as an herbalist, listening about my people. I really honor the indigenous people of my area, the Cherokee people, for letting us have their land, and for not have their land, but letting us, we are on here to honor them and their passage there. I'm very grateful for all of you here, and I hope that you can use the plants and moving forward to build beautiful communities and heal yourself as well. So we have any more questions? I just have like 2 minutes. Cherokee lineage. Oh, Ashe, you're so welcome. Oh, thank you. I hope everyone gets to make the cocktail. Yes, I will put the recipe. I will give that. I'll send that over to Mountain Rose Herbs for you. And yes, they have the link to all of my website and my bio and all of the different things. So you can find me. Follow me on Instagram at Lucretia Zen. You'll see lots of different stories that I like to share and a lot of my research that I'm doing. You'll get a sneak peek on the book. And then also, I just posted a really great magical jelly recipe that was based on my grandmother's recipe, but I also used lemon balm and some of the flower essences in there. So it's kind of like Hogwarts meets folk magic jelly. But I really created it with lemon balm for heart healing. And then I put some grief tincture with mimosa. Mimosa is another one of my favorite plants also. Helps move that deep grief in there. And I love her pink, pink, pink flowers that she has. So I think that mimosa also teaches us how to unapologetically stand in your glory. So I always add that in a lot of my jelly mixtures and some of my cocktail libations or my mocktail libations. I'll add in some of my little tinctures just for energetics, sometimes a few drops, sometimes a bigger drop. Yes, I will post the elemental chart information for you all in the group chat as soon as the next one is over. Thank you for being moved by the stories. Lucretia Zen, as in Zen, Lucretia. So we're going to hand this over to our hostess with the mostest. Thank you again, Mountain Rose Herbs, for giving me the opportunity to share these stories. Thank you all for listening to them. I hope that it inspires you to seek out other stories of other people's connection to the plants and also your own stories of your own ancestors. Please send those to me. I just love hearing about, oh, my grandmother made this. Oh, my auntie used to make that. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Sending all the love from the Blue Ridge and Appalachian Mountains. Thank you so, so, so much.
Thank you so much, Lucretia. It was so inspiring to just have you bring all of these people alive for us and to just help us kind of go down this, a path with each one of them, a new story. And so that was really beautiful. And I love the kind of balance that we've had between like learning so much about the flowers and the plants and then learning so deeply about the people and the people's traditions. Thank you for bringing all of that. And we get to have cocktails, all of us together someday. That would be.
I know, and talk about plants and flower magic. Yes. I was like, as soon as you came on with the first plant, I was like, oh my goodness, flowers, and love messages of community and healing with plants. I just love being with all of you in this space and sharing my people's medicine with you and these stories and creating new stories together.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here. And we can't wait to see those blog posts you talked all about.
Oh my God. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, so that was beautiful and just so fun on this gorgeous spring day. Although it's gorgeous spring day where we are. I have no idea where Christine is because Christine is over in Oregon. Christine is the Mountain Rose Herbs product manager, which actually means she's like the Google of the natural products. But I can't imagine her job, because when I go onto the website of Mountain Rose and I'm looking at what they have, there's just so much. And she actually, I think, knows about every single one of those things and is knowledgeable about all that. She's also a certified aromatherapist, and she's basically like an encyclopedia. So today, Christine is going to be bringing you the aromatic piece with looking at blending essential oils in a blending workshop. So this is going to be really fun, a little bit more like practical stuff, and we can, all use a little bit of that sensory beauty in our life. So thank you so much, Christine, and we cannot wait to have you, or to hear what you have to say.
Hi, I'm just adjusting my camera a little bit so you can hopefully see everything, but not too much.
It looks good to me. So
there we go. I'm here. Thanks, Bevin. So welcome everybody, and I just want to thank you for all showing up today, and also thank Mountain Rose Herbs for giving me this opportunity, because I've been wanting to put sort of this blending workshop together for quite some time and haven't quite had the perfect opportunity, and this is going to be it. As Bevin mentioned, I'm the products manager at Mountain Rose, and we do have a large offering. Before we dive into the blending today, I want to tell a job-related story this morning with my daughter. So I packed her up for her first full day in school today in over a year. So in this last year, I've had to bring a lot of our product R&D, including our new loose leaf tea tins, home, and juggle the working from home and homeschooling for quite a bit. And we went shopping last night for food for her lunches, and she wanted some tea that I know we didn't have in the house, so I let her pick out a box of tea. And this morning while we were making it, I asked her if she had put the tea bag in her mug, and she looked at me and said, "The tea's in a bag? That is so weird." And it just melts my heart every time she says these little quirky things that I realize we're helping her grow up with, versus most people prefer tea bags over the loose leaf tea. And it was just a pleasant way to start my morning. As far as our presentation goes today, I am about 4 or 5 feet away from my computer, so I'm going to try and fill the rest of the time with you guys with content. I don't plan on taking questions. I can't really see the chat from here too, but I'm hoping you can see my workspace here. We are going to be working with the essential oils that are yet another new packaging from the last year, our new essential oil kits, and we're working with the classic essential oil kit. We're going to get into those oils in a moment, but first I want to go over some of the supplies and everything I kind of get together when I'm blending. Number one would be towels. There are many of times where I've spilled oils all over the place, so I like to work with at least one towel. I've got 3 over here, which might be good. I also have notebook and pens. You always want to make sure that you write everything down that you're doing, so you can either recreate a blend that you really love later on, or avoid a blend that didn't work out so much. I keep notes on everything, whether I liked it or not. In addition to that, I've got labels and a Sharpie to label any containers. I've got my oils. I have some stuff over here for finished products after we work with the blend, and giving you some options on what you can do with it then. I also have this little sort of, it's probably difficult to see, essential oil key. It's just a rectangular piece of plastic, and it works really good to take the reducers out of the essential oil bottles. When I'm working with them, I find it easier to work with droppers than trying to drop oils out of the bottle. But I always put the reducer back on, because if you leave them off, the lids aren't always tight and the bottles can leak a little bit. So I take them off while I'm blending, but make sure I put them back on when I'm done for storage. So I have some glass droppers, which I'm going to work with today, but you can also find different options of disposable droppers. Realizing it might be hard to see back there. You can find different disposable dropper options on the market too, if that's the way you want to go. I do have some beakers, which I'm going to use for cleanup a little later. I also have a graduated cylinder, which I like to use when I'm scaling up a blend that I like. It makes it easy to measure out what we're working with. And then when I'm blending, I like to use these little clear 8-ounce glass jars so that you can see the blend. Sometimes the oils don't mix together as you would expect. And then you can also see how full you're making it. It makes it just a nice way to see what you're doing while you're blending. I also have some aroma sticks, scent sticks. What else are these called? Perfume blotters. If you don't have these, you can always just use cotton balls or even a Q-tip if you want. And it's just to smell your blend out of the bottle, outside of the container that you're working with. And then I have some other things over here that we'll get out later when we get to a finished blend and are ready to make something out of it. So let's see. Let's dive into the oils that we're working with today. I didn't prep any sort of planned recipe for this demo. I really am just working with the oils, working with how I feel today, and what sounds good. Let's see. So our new essential oil kits do come in a craft clamshell with an insert on directions and details on all of the oils in them. They all have 5 milliliter oils in them as well. So today we are working with eucalyptus. We are also working with lavender. I'm not going to hold them up because I'm guessing you can't see them. We're working with an Oregon peppermint, which is slightly different than an Indian peppermint in scent. We're working with sweet orange, and we are also working with tea tree essential oil. Before I open these, I do want to remind people that when you are working with essential oils and blending, it's a good idea to make sure you're working in a well-ventilated space. You can wear gloves and eyewear. Today, I'm not working with the oils for that long, so I'm choosing to not. But if you're working with them for an elongated period of time, gloves, eyewear, ventilation, even stepping away from the room for a little bit is also a good option if you're feeling overwhelmed by the scents. Which does bring me back to the blue tansy comment from the previous presentation. And I have worked with blue tansy once. It's a really, really strong, aromatically strong oil. It's in our new Pick Me Up blend. And I had to leave that blend multiple times just to kind of clear my head and clear my senses from the smell. And I eventually got to the point where I doubled all of the ingredients in the blend except for the blue tansy to get it down to a workable percent of that blend. So it's really strong and you only need a little bit for anything that you're working with. Okay, let's see. Towel, paper, pen, and let's talk about our oils. We don't have a whole lot of base notes in this kit, which is fine. You don't necessarily need to have what is considered a base note oil when you're blending. Base notes can be really strong in aroma or really soft. I use amorous a lot because it holds on to a lot of your top notes, but doesn't have a strong scent, where there's also the opposite of that, I would say, would be a vetiver, which is really strong in aroma. And we're going to talk about aroma strength in a moment as well. So we have, let's see, I'm going to separate these. We have eucalyptus, which is a top note when blending. We have lavender, which can kind of be in the middle. Peppermint is a middle note. And then we have sweet orange and tea tree, which I both think as top notes as well. So when talking about the notes, your top notes are what you're going to smell very first. All oils have top notes, middle notes, and base notes. It depends on how strong they are on the spectrum of those, of that range. And it's not specific. Sometimes an oil can be used as a top note. Sometimes an oil can be used as a middle note. Sometimes a great example is Clary Sage. It is sort of middle to top note, but it has a lot of fixative or base note qualities. But so it all depends on how you're mixing stuff and how you're going to use it. So with these, we have mostly top notes and middle notes here. I wouldn't classify any of these as base notes, but we're going to work with what we have. Another thing to take into consideration when blending is the aroma strength of an oil. Earlier when I was talking about base notes, I had amorous, which is a very low, subtle, doesn't have a very high aroma strength, and then vetiver, which is very strong, kind of in your face a bit. So when you hear people talking about aroma strength, it's kind of how strong is the scent? Is it going to overpower other things that you're blending with? And as far as we have here, let me look at them again. I move them all around. So the sweet orange has sort of a middle aroma strength. When blending with fat, you're going to tend to add a bit more of it if you want the citrus notes to come out. Eucalyptus and tea tree are very strong as far as aroma strength goes, and they're going to stand out a little bit more. So you may not want to add as much. And then lavender is, I think of as a middle aroma strength, depending on what you're blending it with and what kind of lavender you're using. Here we have the English lavender, the angustifolia, which is going to be a little sweeter. If you're working with the lavandin grosso or even the spike lavender, which would be even more down the extreme, you're going to get some of the spicier notes of lavender, the floral spicy versus the floral sweet in what we're working with today. And then peppermint is also a really strong, has a strong aroma strength. It's going to stand out a bit more, especially with some of the oils that we're working with today. This Oregon peppermint that's in this kit is local from the Pacific Northwest, where you can also find Indian peppermint on the market, and they do have slightly different aromas. The Oregon peppermint is kind of a little more punch in the face almost with the minty menthol smell, but they both tend to, I find they have kind of the similar herbal dry out notes when you let them dissipate a little bit. But I do like this one. It's been playing with it a little bit more than the Indian peppermint that I've traditionally been used to. And I'm realizing I don't have a clock anywhere. Okay, there we go. So the first thing that I like to do when blending is kind of just spend some time with each oil. Even if it's something that I work with all the time and I'm really familiar with, it's good to take a moment to smell and just kind of reflect on the oil at the time that you're working with it. Sometimes you can smell something in the morning and love it, and then at the end of the day, it might just drive you crazy, or, you know, after you eat, you don't like to smell certain stuff. So oils, if you don't like something one day, I recommend you try it the next. Or smell it. They're going to smell different to you at different times of the day. So for sweet orange, we've got, yeah, it's very, very typical. What I remember, sugary, sweet, slight citrus, not a sour citrus, a bit more sweet. Yeah. And while I have these open, I'm also going to pop off the reducers here. And then across the towel that I'm working with, I like to put the reducer by the bottle that I'm using, put the cap back on it because I'm done for right now. And then I'm going to grab one of my glass droppers because that's what I'm going to use when I'm working with just this oil. Next, we've got the eucalyptus, which is going to be strong in your face, or that's what I expect, which it definitely is. Packs a punch. Very aromatic, very camphoraceous. Yeah, a little green on the back notes there. But a very nice oil, very good for opening airways. Great to just add to the shower on its own. Yeah. Now we're moving on to tea tree. I do find that most people either have a love-hate relationship with tea tree. It has a really sort of medicinal, grassy scent, in my opinion. This one's smelling a little, to me right now, it's a little muted, but that might also be because I was just smelling eucalyptus. They do have some similar notes to it. Yeah. And then tea tree as a standalone is really great for cleaning recipes in the bathroom. I like to use it in surface cleaners or any sort of bath bomb for a toilet cleanser. But yeah, it smells a little different without the reducer as well. Nice. Okay. And yeah, just to keep in mind as you're getting your oils out, to keep everything lined up so you're not mixing utensils and accidentally mixing in your oil bottles. All right, onto the lavender. This will be a good cleansing after the tea tree and the eucalyptus there. Yeah, this one is very sweet, very typical Angustifolia. Very floral. Yeah, that's a nice one. What am I doing? There we go. And then that's not what I want. Last in this kit, we have the Oregon peppermint. And I would say, back to the aroma strength, out of all 5 of these, this is going to be the strongest one when just smelling standalone. Yeah, that one I'm still getting familiar with the Oregon peppermint, familiarizing myself with it. It's really minty, that has sort of these really beautiful herbaceous kind of swirls in it. That one's going to be good. Okay. So, not to be overwhelmed, but working with 5 oils is kind of a lot. I think I'm going to try and maybe work with just a couple at a time, and just talk about kind of my approaches to blending. It's not a science, it's personal preference across the board, no matter what. Even with picking out oils themselves, a lot of times I will just kind of sit and stare at the oils for a while and maybe smell a few. I might change my mind a few times on what I want to work with, depending on what I'm doing. I'm actually going to turn these so I can see what I'm doing. And then, yeah, let's just get started. Let's work with, I might try and do 2 blends today. Again, if you're joining us now, I'm making brand new blends. I didn't plan any of this, and we're just kind of gonna go for it and see what we can come up with. I'm gonna save the peppermint for maybe a second blend because that one's really strong and I want to sort of start off on the light end. So I think I'm gonna work with the sweet orange and the lavender. And actually, let's just start from there and see how we feel. So before I start blending, I do like to write down what oils I'm working with. And then I also work in drops so that you can make an easy percentage afterwards. And it doesn't matter if you're writing them down in order that you add them, or if you're writing them down, I mean, you could if you wanted, or writing them down in largest to smallest, because you're not going to know that yet. Orange and lavender. And I like to put the name. You could go as far as writing down the lot number of the oil that you're working with. Again, that's going to depend on what purpose you're doing. If you're sort of formulating for gifts or something bigger and you want to recreate exactly what you have, lot numbers are good to know, but I don't always do that. So I just start off with the oil names, and then I just start writing down the drops that I'm adding. And for this one, let's see. So I have the sweet orange and lavender, and I'm just going to start off with equal parts and see how I feel. And I do like working with really, really small amounts. You don't need a whole lot to get the oils together. So I'm going to just start off with 2 drops of orange and 2 drops of lavender. So I do encourage, hold on to whatever bottle you're working with, so that you don't spill anything. These are small bottles, especially the little ones that I like to blend in. So yeah, I've got the sweet orange, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's got some color to it. Citrus oils are going to be, usually cold pressed citrus oil is going to have some sort of color to the liquid. They shouldn't be clear. If they are clear, you're probably working with a distilled oil, which are also on the market. So when buying citrus oils, make sure you're paying attention to how they're produced. So I'm going to go ahead and then hold on to my blending bottle and get 2 drops in there. Put the oil back into whatever bottle you're working with, and then just set the dropper on your towel here and close your bottle. Again, you don't want to spill anything. And then let's add 2 drops of our lavender. And this oil, lavender, is typically almost clear, could be considered colorless. It might be, you might see a slight hint of color depending on the lot. But for this one, you are looking for a clear oil for the most part. Okay, so we've got 2 drops of the lavender there. And then blend it together. I mean, that's only 4 drops of oil. It looks like almost nothing in the bottle, but it's going to be enough to kind of smell and see if we like it or not and where we want to go from here. So like we were talking about the aroma strength a little bit earlier, I'm just grabbing a little aroma strip here to kind of dip in there and smell. So yeah, so it's like similar to the aroma strength comments I had earlier. The lavender is a little stronger than the sweet orange, so I'm picking up on the floral notes of lavender. The citrus is just slightly underneath that. And I think I want to add more orange to this one. I do like lavender. I don't personally like it overpowering my blends, but it is a good additive and very helpful oil when you're creating something. So I am going to go ahead and add another 2 drops of orange. So we're up to 4 drops of orange, 2 drops of lavender. And you don't need to fill your droppers all the way, just enough to have oil to work with there when you're dropping them out. All right. I'm just going to close this guy, kind of let it roll it around a little bit and see where we get here. It is good to smell right out of the bottle, but one of the reasons why I like to use the aroma strips is that we're working with such small amounts that a lot of times the last oil that you put in there is what you smell first, just because it could be around the lip or just on. So it is good to take in straight out of the bottle at first, but then you also want to kind of bring it out of the bottle away from your working space. I do like that a little more. I think personally, I'm ready to add a different oil to this. But I do want to bump up the citrus a little bit more. I'm going to do one more drop of orange. And then I think I'd like to add the eucalyptus. And so the eucalyptus is really strong. I'm only going to start with adding one drop. So we're going to add one drop of eucalyptus, one drop of orange. See where we stand there. I'm going to start with the orange since I'm hoping that might be it for this, but we'll see. And then one drop of eucalyptus. Yeah, just spend a little more time with it. Eucalyptus is a clear oil. It's more clear, more translucent than the lavender oil. You shouldn't really find any color in the eucalyptus when you're pulling it out into the dropper. One drop there. Being careful, as I said earlier, to hold on to all the bottles that you're working with. Cap everything when you're done. It's really easy when you have stuff lined up to accidentally just smack a bottle and have it all over the table. I did that the other day with something on my desk. It was a mess. I don't remember what it was though. Okay, so that eucalyptus did not come out as much as I thought it would. So I'm going to add another drop. And then I think I might be in a good spot. All right. So one more drop of eucalyptus in there. Just going to mix it up a little bit. And in here we have, so far we have 5 drops of orange, 2 drops of lavender, and 2 drops of eucalyptus. I mean, that's a really small amount. It's not taking up much of the bottle at all. And we'll get there in a moment. I do like that. Let's see, let's get it on the perfume stick. It's kind of nice. The eucalyptus sort of blends with the lavender. So you have this sort of brighter floral more than a sweet floral. And then the citrus is just a little bit on the back end there, kind of like a quiet undertone. That's quite pleasant. Okay, so when I get to a spot where I feel good about where I'm at, I'll usually double the drops that I have in my sample, just because I want to be able to smell it stronger before we move forward with other steps. So I'm going to add another, and I'm writing this all down. So I have orange, I have 2 + 2 + 1. My lavender is at 2, and my eucalyptus is at 1 + 1. So we're going to go ahead and add another 5 orange, another 2 lavender, and another 2 eucalyptus, and see, and then maybe just take a step away from this blend and smell it in about 10 minutes and see how we like it done. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The other reason why I like working with a dropper versus the reducer caps that are in your oils is that it's easier to control. Essential oils have different viscosities, so some come out of the reducers really fast, and it's easy to lose count of how many drops you've put in there. In some cases, they may come out so fast that it's sort of like a stream of liquid where you want to just barely tip your bottle to get drops out of it while you're working with it. But with a glass dropper, or if you any other dropper you choose to use, it's easier to control and count what you're putting in your blended bottle there. So we added 5 more orange, 2 more eucalyptus, and now we're going to add 2 more lavender. And then we're going to go ahead and just put the cap on it. I'm not even going to smell it again right now. I'm just going to put it right there. And I think we're going to dive into one other blend. I want to work with the peppermint and the tea tree. And then we'll come back to this and see how we feel. If we really like it, we're going to go ahead and mix up a larger batch. And we're going to go through steps on that. And then we'll also go through steps to moving on to a finished product. I think with this one that we just did with the orange, lavender, and eucalyptus, I might do a room spray. I think it'd be a good spray for the bathroom. Talking about the bathroom a lot, which is kind of weird, but a lot of these oils are very good for that space, among other things. This would be a good aroma spray in the bathroom, or also just a straight diffuser blend as well, just to kind of freshen up space, maybe in the kitchen or the living room. So let's move on. I'm just going to call this blend number 1. And I'm also going to put a little label. I'm not going to label the bottle yet, but I'm going to put a label in front of it so I know what it is. Number 1. Okay. Now let's work with the peppermint and the tea tree. So I'm going to grab another bottle here. I've still got usually if I'm working on completely different blends, I'll kind of clean or move away from the other oils that I have out already, put the 3 that I've used away. But I think I might use some of them with these 2 oils, but we'll see. So for the peppermint and the tea tree off the bat, I know that the peppermint's really strong. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a little more tea tree than peppermint. But the equal parts that we started with on the other blend is always a good start. You know, blend them together, see what you like, see what stands out. It's a good base. So tea tree and peppermint. I'm going to go ahead and start off with 3 drops of tea tree and 1 of peppermint and see what we think. So tea tree oil is almost clear. It's not as clear as eucalyptus, but not as yellow, light translucent as lavender. All 3 of these are going to be about this, or they go in that order as far as color. Eucalyptus, clear, tea tree, a little bit more color, and lavender, just a little bit. Again, they're all translucent. So 3 drops, whoop, I have to open my bottle. 3 drops of tea tree. There we go. And then 1 drop of the Oregon peppermint. Peppermint's another one that is usually clear or almost colorless. This lot is really clear. Ooh, I can smell it. It's really strong. All right, 3 tea tree, 1 peppermint. While we let that mix up a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and talk about tea tree a little bit more. The scent itself is, as I was saying earlier, it's kind of medicinal, a little herby and green. There can be times where it smells a little funky, and that's usually because it's a really fresh distillation. In those cases, you can let it sit for a little bit, and that will mellow out into kind of the beautiful tea tree scent that you're familiar with. Most people don't like, or people, like I said, people do have a love-hate relationship with tea tree. It's just really amazing, or they're kind of put off by it, but it's a great oil to have around. Let's see, that's only 4 drops, not that much, but let's go ahead and smell this one. 3 parts tea tree, 1 part peppermint. Which right now to me is a very nice combination. Things a little bit, but you're still getting those herbaceous notes from the tea tree. That was a good guess. I do want a little bit more on this blend. So I might, let's see. I'm going to add, I don't want to add too much lavender, but I think I am going to add a lavender and maybe a eucalyptus. But let's start with adding just 1 drop of lavender. When we're working with such small amounts, you might get to the point where, you know, you're putting your little perfume droppers in and it is absorbing a good amount of what you're doing. Similar to how we doubled this, you might get to a point where you kind of want to double what you've done already. And as long as you're writing it all down, you should be able to keep track of everything. So the lavender kind of brought the mint out a little bit more, which was not my intention. And a lot of blending is personal preference, kind of gut feeling, I think sometimes. Stuff can work out really well or not so well at all. Yeah, I don't know if adding that lavender helped with the peppermint there. All right, here we go. Let's keep working with this. Sometimes if you add something and it's just horrible, put it aside, put it away and start over. A lot of times I'll have, you know, citrus blend number 1, citrus blend number 2, and next thing you know, I have 5 different bottles of the citrus blend that I'm trying to make. But we're only working in little teeny quantities, so it's not a whole lot of oil that you're using if you make something you don't like. Yeah, so I am going to, let's see, gut feeling here, trying to save this. I'm going to add another drop of tea tree and 1 drop of eucalyptus. For this blend where it's going right now, I'm kind of thinking of sort of an energizing yet calming, maybe a roll-on oil for like the temples or the base of the neck here. But let's add our eucalyptus and see what we think. So 1 drop there, closing the bottles. Just kind of a little swirl. And this time I'm just going to smell it out of the bottle for now. Yeah, I think I'm to the point where I need to double what I put in here just so that I can get a good sense of what it smells like. So I'm going to add another 4 drops of tea tree, 1 drop of peppermint, 1 drop of lavender, and 1 drop of eucalyptus, just so that we have a little bit more to kind of take in. The oils that we're working with right now are creating a more complex scent than the first one that we put together. So I just kind of want to get a little bit more volume so that I can wrap my brain around it, see how I feel. All right. One thing that is sort of messing me up a little bit, which I usually, since I just have all of these laid out, I usually will organize my oils in the order I wrote them down on my paper that I'm working with. So I'm having to pause and find what to add. All right, I did another lavender, 1 peppermint. Let's see, 1 lavender. And then 4 tea tree on this one. Okay. Making sure I'm not mixing lids, not mixing droppers, not losing lids. That's always a good one. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this one. Take a drink of water. Check the time. Oh, wow. Okay, we're doing good. So I'm going to I already wrote this down as number 2. So I'm just going to I'm not going to smell this again yet. I'm going to set it back down and move back to our previous blend, the one with the orange and lavender and eucalyptus, and see how we feel about that one. All right. So this is just set for a little bit. We're revisiting it. If I had more time, I would probably usually leave the room for a minute and come back to it. Oh, this is actually very pleasant. It's floral, yet not too lavendery, overpowering. It's got a slight camphoraceous undertone from the eucalyptus, and then the orange is just like this little sweet pop. Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, so I am happy with this blend. Again, it is, let's see, what we worked on as far as our recipe here goes ends up being 10 drops of orange, or you can also think of it as 10 parts, 4 drops of lavender, and 3 drops of eucalyptus. And from there, if you have something you really like I said, make sure you write it down. And then there's a few next steps. If you just like the blend for a diffuser, you could just continue to add your drops to this little bottle that you're working with and then use it from there. You could also make a larger blend. And for that, I like to use the graduated cylinders and put it in a reducer cap, depending on how much you're going to use. And then again, we're also going to put it into a finished product. So for this one, let's see, this one's going to be a room spray or body spray if you want to, a nice little pick-me-up spritz. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the droppers, use our drop count, and fill up this little 1/8 ounce bottle that we started with. So 10, let's see, could probably at least double what we have. I'm going to go ahead and add 30 drops of orange. I'm not going to count out loud. That was 20. All right, so I just added 30 drops of orange, which also means I need to triple our lavender drops again. So that's going to take us from 4 to 12. And just remember that calculators are your friends. So are Excel spreadsheets, depending on what you're doing. I like to rely on all sorts of things to add up my numbers. All right. And then if we're going to triple the eucalyptus, that's going to take us from 3 drops to 9. If you're going to make a larger batch, or if you want to make a larger batch, you can take your number of drops and use it to make a percentage. So here our total drops on this blend with the 10, 4, and 3 would be 17. I can't do those percentages in my head, but 10 out of 17 is going to give you your orange percentage. 4 divided by 17 is going to give you your lavender, and 3 divided by 17 is going to be your eucalyptus. And from there, you can take those percentages and scale them up to whatever size batch you want, which is often what I do to make sort of like a 10 mil bottle of oils. Okay. So I don't have this quite full. It's about half full, which is all I'm going to need right now because we're just going to make a couple of room sprays. So for that, a room spray or a body spray, I like to make at about a 2% dilution for oils or for the essential oil. And I've got a 2-ounce Mr. bottle here, glass bottle. I do like the amber to kind of protect it from sunlight. So for a 2% of 1 ounce is going to be 12 drops of oil. So since we have a 2-ounce bottle here, we're going to go ahead and put 24 drops of our oil blend that we just made into the dropper or into the bottle. I'm realizing I didn't bring enough glass droppers. So I'm going to go this way. All right. So to make our finished room spray or body spray, if you prefer, I'm going to go ahead and put 12 drops per ounce of essential oil into the bottle. One, two, three, and 12. All right. So I've got 12 drops of our oil blend. I'm going to put this right there. And then for this, I am just going to fill the rest of the bottle with witch hazel. So this is an organic witch hazel extract, which does have alcohol blended into it, which is going to add a little bit of preservative action to this finished product. It's still, I wouldn't consider it a preservative, but it's just going to kind of lengthen the shelf life of this bottle, of this spray that we're making right now. So again, 12 drops per ounce in our bottle here. So there's about 24 drops of our essential oil blend in the amber glass bottle. And like I said, I'm just going to top it off with witch hazel. You could use a funnel for this. If you feel like you have a steady hand, just go for it here. You could also use a beaker or a measuring cup. And you don't have to stick with witch hazel. You could play even more with aromatics if you wanted, and maybe do half witch hazel and let's see, maybe a blood orange hydrosol, or you could even go to the point of, this is convenient, our 3-ounce hydrosols that already have a mister top on them. So if you have an essential oil blend that you really like, you can just add it to a full bottle of hydrosol. Since these are 3 ounces, you would probably want to add around 36 drops depending on the aromatics, but you don't have to work specifically with just witch hazel. There's other ways for you to play with the aromatics a little bit. And if you don't like witch hazel, you could also use distilled water, all personal preference on what you like to use. So here is our finished aroma spray. This is a water base, so the essential oils are not going to emulsify in here. So do shake before use. Even with shaking it, they're not technically emulsified into the water, but it is going to disperse them so that they're coming out into the air and you're not just getting a mist of witch hazel extract. Let's see. I am just, now that we have our finished product, I'm going to go ahead and label that. And I am just going to call this the FHP aroma spray. That's as far as my creativity and names right now. And I'm going to date it so I know when I made this, which is, what's the date? I'm just going to put April 2021. Depending on how much you use an aroma spray or a room spray, 2 ounces might be a lot. You might want to scale down to just a 1 ounce bottle. But they're just a quick, easy way to add aromatics and have them easily accessible around your house. So there we just went from initial blend where we only used 9 drops of essential oil to enough where we could make a finished product. And it doesn't take long. And it's all personal preference. It's fun. Just go ahead and have fun with it. I don't think, blends don't have to be perfect. They just have to be something that you like. So now let's revisit our second blend here and see how it turned out. So again, for this one, the second blend, we ended up with 8 drops of tea tree, 2 peppermint, 2 lavender, and 2 eucalyptus. Let's see. Still a little strong. The peppermint, not strong, the peppermint stands out more. And then as it dries down a little bit, whoop, you drop it. as it dries down a little bit, then the tea tree is coming out a little bit. Interesting. This one I'm not fully in love with yet, but I do think it has potential. So in a lot of these cases, what I will end up doing is putting a lid on it, labeling it, and coming back to it a couple days later. That kind of just separates you from the initial blending experience, and then some of the sensory overload, depending on how much you've been working with the oils at the time. And I'm just gonna come back to this one, like I said, in a couple of days and see how I feel. I'm really hoping it'll make a really nice sort of uplifting roll on. And for that, you would do the same thing, increase the amount of drops in your vial. And then in a 10, let me get my numbers straight. In a 10 ml roll top bottle, and again, these come with the roller ball separate, and then after you would fill it, you insert the roller ball and then the lid. In a 10 ml roller bottle, you only need 2 to 4 drops of essential oil, depending on the dilution that you want. So you're not using much at all. In fact, we could, if we wanted to, go ahead and make a roll on with what we've already blended. Actually, maybe I will do that, because I don't like the oil I don't think this is right where I want it to be. It might smell a little different once it's rolled on. So while I have you here, I'm going to go ahead and just make a quick roll on. Hopefully I have enough oil. Looks like I do. I'm going to go ahead and reblend this afterwards so that I can revisit it next week and see how I feel. So I'm going to do 4 drops here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that used up almost everything we made, which is fine. And then I'm going to top it off with a fractionated coconut oil. I do like to work with the coconut oil just because it's a very neutral, doesn't have a scent. But you could also use sesame seed oil, almond oil, even olive oil if you wanted. Sunflower is a good one that's a little more neutral. Because this one is an oil base, you can expect your essential oils to blend in all of the way. Let's see. There we go. So we put 4 drops of oil in here, and then I just topped it off with the fractionated coconut oil. And that blend was pretty clear to begin with because of the oils that we worked with. But depending on what you're using aromatically, there we go. You could end up with a slightly colored oil here, or if you're using a different base besides the fractionated coconut. All right. So we have our FHP aroma spray. And then we'll also just label this one as our free Herbalism Project roll-on. Because they're just single products, I'm going to go ahead, like I said, and date it so I know when I made them. Depending on how much you use these type of products, it might be a lot, and you want to maybe just make a smaller bottle. We do have 5 milliliter roll-ons in addition to the 10 milliliter that I worked with today. Oh, that label's going to overlap. And then we also have a 1 ounce roll-on if you really use a lot of this type of product, or you want it for a more general application. I'm going to go ahead and let that sit and just talk about cleanup really quick because we're running out of time. So when all is said and done, you want to make sure you put your reducers back into your essential oil bottles. And then as far as cleaning the droppers, I like to just use a little bit of alcohol. Rubbing alcohol is fine. We're not using it to make anything. We're just using it to clean. But I'll just put a little bit of alcohol in a beaker, in a mason jar works as well, whatever you have around the house, and then kind of just get it up into the dropper a little bit and go from there. And then you can clean all of them, and then just another quick rinse in the wash too, as well, in the sink with soap. Hot soapy water is also really good for cleaning out essential oils. The alcohol just kind of acts as a solvent to kind of pull anything off the glass really quick. Yeah, let's see. Put your reducers back into your bottles, clean up your droppers, and I think that is about all we have time to go over. I wish I would have scheduled more time for this, because I could have gone on for quite a bit longer. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you learned a few helpful tips on blending essential oils. It's definitely not as hard as I think some people think it is, and it's really just a lot of fun. You don't have to get complicated and blend 20 different oils to make this really big, powerful accord. You can just blend 2 or 3. Some of my favorite blends are just 2 oils, and then mixed together, always starting with equal parts. But yeah, thank you again. I think Bevin's coming back. Yay. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much, Christine. That was really, really fun.
That was so much fun. I want to do it again.
I know. I know. How much fun is that? So in the future, how do people find out about making sure they have the kit? Is that
the kits are available right now on the website.
Okay.
We actually launched a whole bunch of new kits. So the classic is kind of a take on the classic essential oil kit that we sold in the past, but we have also launched a citrus kit that's all beautiful citrus oils. We have a resins kit. We have a kit of some of our new essential oil blends, which is a fun way to play with all of those, finished products. Yeah, there's a few more. Check them out.
Sounds awesome. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for coming, and a huge thank you to Lemolo and Rosalee and Lucretia and Christine, and of course to Mountain Rose Herbs for putting this all together and for hosting it. It is so fun to just have this time to connect and get to explore all these different things together. Kind of sit in this big giant circle that's all crazy all over the world. So I hope you all take some time to smell the flowers, maybe give some flowers to someone else, think about all that you've learned, smell something beautiful, and take really good care of yourself. So be safe, everyone, and take care. And I look forward to seeing you in the future.